Hello everyone. Sorry I'm running so late today. I forgot today was Sunday, and by the time I found out, I had only a few minutes to schedule the stream, and as you guys know, it takes like a solid hour to prepare for the stream, and I was busy talking to Steve, so I didn't have all that time to finish. So I'm sorry. I'm like still trying to set everything up. So I will not be on the screen right now, but you can still talk to me and I can read your comments. But hello everyone. Let me get my phone out so I can see your guys' comments. Because I have your comments on my computer, but I can't see my computer from this distance. Alright, so yeah, hello everyone. I won't read out everybody's name right now because I have to finish doing this, but I'll read your comments if you have a question or something. Yeah, Carl says, take all the time you need to set up. I know, but people who come to this channel for the first time, they'll be like, where is the host? Why is there an empty seat? So I have to hurry. Alright, so Transit Biker says setup is fun too. Yeah, you guys will see how I set everything up. Transit Biker says, Alex, I've been waiting to catch a live stream to share some cool info about SS United States since I don't use Twitter. Awesome. Years of Seas is talking to Blue Ribbon. Hello, Jeffrey. Alright, so I'm going to sit over here while I dry these out. Okay, so I knew it. That train camera is really large in the screen. Okay, so nice. People have, who is it that's getting a new pool? Moonzer's getting a new pool. Interesting. So I just washed all the china that I'm going to use today, so I need to dry it off because otherwise, well, I mean, the teapot and teacup don't need to be dry. But I like everything else to be dry, so nice. So for those that are new, this is an authentic tea set from the Cunard Queens, the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth ships. And the oldest piece I have dates back to 1952, and the newest piece I have dates back to 1967, when the Queen Mary retired. And yeah, they're still in really good condition. Well, actually, one of my teapots has a crack in it from the last owner, and then one of my teacups has a crack in it from the last owner. And the funny thing about eBay is when you get this stuff on eBay, they're supposed to list the damages that are on these things. But the person that sold it to me did not list the damages to the teapot, and then the other person who sold the teacup did not list the damages either. So I was pretty upset when they arrived because they were already cracked and not usable technically. I mean, you could fill them with tea, and I do occasionally fill the cracked teapot with tea, but what happens is the tea seeps through the cracks and turns the cracks brown. And so it becomes very visible that there are cracks. So, let's see. Daniel says, Alex, do you consider the Queen Mary as the Mauretania of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s? I mean, that's a strange way of putting it, but I mean, I can see how someone might think that. It became Cunard's flagship. It was the ship that that could capture the blue riband. It, you know, basically took back supremacy of the sea. So, I mean, in a way, yeah, it was kind of the replacement for Mauretania, but probably just in fewer words. Ozzy, the weather is really crazy today. We've had like it's sunny now and calm, but then earlier it was windy and rainy, and then it started hailing. The weather is all over the place right now. So yeah, it's pretty weird. Transit Biker says tea towels were originally used to dry ceramic porcelain tea sets, in fact. Yeah, I mean, that is what they were used for. I don't have any tea towels, so... Daniel says, any work on the railroad? No, actually, there won't be any further work on the model railroad because I am preparing to move to a larger apartment. So I have to actually start packing everything up. And so, yeah. So there will be a point where you guys won't even see stuff on the railroad. It'll all be packed up. Transit Biker says, you definitely don't want to use any old ceramics with broken, cracked, chipped glazing because basically it's just decoration at that point. It can contain lead, cadmium, cobalt. It certainly does. This tea set, underneath the glazing, does contain lead. And it's because of that when I have guests over drinking tea, I'll give them the undamaged ones, but I will drink from the damaged ones. That is a very rare occurrence that happens, so I don't see myself getting poisoned by lead. But yeah, I will be the one to drink from the broken pieces. But yeah, they are pretty much just decoration at that point because it's just not safe really to drink from them. Yeah, guys, if you have ceramic or dishware, basically anything but glass, essentially, from before 1977, I would say, there is a good likelihood that it contains lead or some kind of like arsenic in it, depending on how old it is. So I would definitely, you know, be aware of that. There is a famous set of dishware made by... oh, what's it called? Everyone has this well, not everyone, but a lot of people have this dishware because it's very common even today because it's lasted so long. It's a dishware designed not to easily break. I mean, if you throw it on the ground, it will break, but if you drop it, it should not break. And it's a very famous company, and they still make that dishware today, although it's safer to consume from. But it has like usually like a floral decoration put on top of the glazing around the edges of the plate. And that stuff is Le Creuset? No, not Le Creuset. It is something, I think it begins with C, but no, not Pyrex. Pyrex is pretty safe. Gosh, I don't know. I used to have it, but I don't remember what it's called. But people used to get whole dish sets out of it. Like, even like servingware and Tupperware was made out of it sometimes. And it was a very popular company, especially in the 70s. And yeah, that stuff, people's... Corel, thank you. Yes, Mark, Corel. So if you have Corel dishware that dates back to the 70s, particularly the stuff with the green or the orange floral design around the edges, the Corel dishware can contain traces of lead and sometimes arsenic. And those are very common to use. A lot of people in the U.S. still have them dating back from the 70s. And people do, over time, get lead poisoning eating from them because the decoration is on top of the glazing as opposed to being underneath the glazing. So that can be pretty dangerous. So I no longer have that dishware set, but it does frighten me that for the longest time I was eating from it. So... Yeah, they are practically almost shatterproof. That's why people like them. The Corel ware almost doesn't break. I have broken a couple in the past, but that was from like something really extraordinary. Like they hit the counter first and then hit the floor, a tile floor. So it takes a lot to break them. That's why people like them so much. They're just really, really hardy dishes. Okay, so... let's set everything up. Yeah, Mark, I noticed you were gone, but I am glad you're back. I am really glad you're back. All right, so let's go ahead and move this here. In about 10 minutes, I should have a video that debuts on the channel. The video is, well, you'll see. You'll see. You'll get a notification, hopefully. But yeah, it debuts in 10 minutes. It'll automatically go up on the channel while I'm doing my tea time, if I ever get to it, because there is a lot of like preparation that I have to do. So let's see. I will have to put tea in there, milk and cream. I have everything here. Alright, so I'm going to spend some time off camera. I will not be in front of you guys, but I will be preparing for the tea time. Oh, actually, since I'm sitting here, I might as well try to oil this. Hello, Nathan. Okay. So to run the trains, I have to keep some of the wheels oiled on this locomotive. It takes a very special type of oil that is designed to conduct electricity. I hate doing this, but it's the only way to keep the darn thing working. So give that a turn. Okay. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, hello, I was finally able to be here on Sunday. Awesome, good to have you. Okay. That should be good. Alright, so I will get this train started because, ironically, I do kind of need the sound of the train going around, so that way the music that's playing doesn't get copyright strikes. Or claimed, or whatever you call it. So, okay. Let's go ahead and get that running. Whoa. Almost dropped a lamp. It really is like an obstacle course in here because when I do these live streams, I have to set up a lot of lamps, a lot of equipment, and so it's like an obstacle course of cables and wires and lamps and everything. Alright, now the train's running. I'll continue preparing for tea. Today kind of feels like an Earl Grey day, so let's go ahead and... Oh, I gotta do sugar first. Move that. So I usually put 2.5 teaspoons of the tea in here. I think it works really well with the amount of water this teapot is capable of holding. And then I usually keep the box right out in the open where people can read it so they know what tea I'm having for the day. I'm kind of weird when it comes to details, so... Okay, that's done. Now I'll pour the milk. I am very lactose intolerant, so instead of using milk in my tea, I use oat milk. This is my favorite brand. And one of the other things about oat milk that I like is that... unlike certain other types of alternative milk, oat milk does not destroy or remove the flavor of the tea. Well, for certain teas it will. Like the Lady Grey tea is a really delicate tea, and if you try to put oat milk in there, it will just, the flavor will be gone. Okay. So this... Why is this all weird? There we go. Alright, I have to... I'll pre-warm the teacup and teapot and all that stuff, so... So I fill the tea kettle, or not the water kettle, with water. So what I do is I pre-warm these with the hottest tap water I have, and then I fill them up with the hot tap water. So that way when I'm ready to start pouring boiling water in these, they won't shatter. Because they are authentic china, they really are bone china, and they will shatter with boiling water when they're cold. Okay, I think I am... Oh, right, the tea biscuits. So, I buy McVitie's digestives. Actually, I'm going to get a fresh packet, because I don't like this packet. The packet that I have left in here is all cracked and broken. Sometimes that happens when I buy the tea biscuits, is they arrive completely destroyed. When I buy them, the McVitie's digestives, they come in a package like this, 2 at a time. I prefer the dark chocolate ones. So they have to be imported because, you know, they're only produced for, you know, Great Britain. I keep them in the fridge, so that way the pieces don't melt together. Hello, Willem. I try to open the package very carefully. Oh, wow. This one doesn't look destroyed. Now that is rare. This is the first time I ever received one where the chocolate is almost intact. That's crazy. I give the top a little twist to close it, and then a rubber band to hold down the twist. Then it goes into a Ziploc bag. And then into the fridge. Let's go ahead and turn on the kettle. All right. Oh, I was gonna get the Scottish shortbread. Alright, let me grab the Scottish shortbread real quick. Okay, now we are ready to have tea. Michael says, "Chow, I love those biscuits too." Yeah, they're pretty good. I like the dark chocolate ones the most. I'll deal with the milk chocolate, it's fine. But I don't like the plain ones. They're just too plain for me. Yeah, Twinings Earl Grey is my favorite tea of all time. Yeah, you see, it's kind of funny about Earl Grey was, all my life growing up, I was a coffee person, never a tea person. I hated tea, because every black tea I've had, even sweet tea, I don't like sweet tea, I don't like any American teas, tea was not my thing. Hated tea of all kinds. The only one I didn't hate was green tea, because it was such a neutral flavor that I was fine with it. But other teas, hated them all. I was a coffee person growing up. But as I got older, my body just didn't react to coffee the same way. It just made me feel sluggish, and it gave me heart palpitations, and I just don't feel good when I drink too much caffeine. So I thought, what's something I could drink every day that, I don't know, I guess they say it has the same amount of caffeine, but there's something about tea that doesn't make me feel the same way coffee does. So I switched to doing tea, but I thought, what am I going to drink, because I hate tea. So somebody had recommended Earl Grey. I'm like, no, I had Earl Grey when I was a kid, and it was disgusting. But what I had was like some kind of like Lipton Earl Grey, and I just didn't like it. So someone suggested, why don't you try Twinings? And I'm like, all right, fair enough. It's an authentic British tea, and I'm using authentic British China. So I got Earl Grey's Twinings teas. It was a 3-pack. It was English breakfast, Irish breakfast, and Earl Grey. And immediately the Earl Grey became my favorite. It's just got this flavor that is just out of this world. And so, yeah, I am now a big fan of Earl Grey tea. Specifically Twinings. But yeah. Pookie Smoochie. Hello, Pookie Smoochie. Yeah, I've tried a bunch of different milks, and oat milk is the best for tea because it just doesn't get rid of the flavor. The only time I've had that problem is when I have Lady Grey tea, which is just a really delicate tea, and when you try to pour oat milk into it, the flavor just disappears. So I have Lady Grey tea by itself, no cream or anything. Well, there is sugar, but there's no cream. But I found that Earl Grey tea is great to have by itself with some sugar, maybe even some lemon, pretty good. But I still prefer it with milk, so. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, what is the main difference between Cunard's RMS Caronia and RMS Carmania built in the early 20th century? I'm still very new to Caronia and Carmania, but if I have it correctly, one of those ships was given a steam turbine, or two steam turbines as its main propulsion, and the other one was given a traditional reciprocating engine, if I'm remembering the ships correctly. So, I'm still learning about ships. Sam says, found your channel last week, and it was love at first view. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad. Okay, so the water is finished boiling. Now I'm going to empty out half of the hot tap water in the teacup and teapot, because the straight up boiling water is still hot enough that it could crack the china. So we only pour out half. Okay. And then we pre-warm by topping it off with boiling water. And I'll let that sit for a minute to come up to temperature. Right now, there should be a video that 10 minutes ago went public. It's my video called Forgetting You Are at Sea. And it's a good one, I think. I think it was a good topic that I wanted to choose. So when you have a chance, be sure to watch it. Transit Biker says, I believe the ships serving tea with those would have a warming rack to keep them from getting thermal shock before use and after washing. Indeed, yeah, I think they would have had that. And they probably also would have given it a quick rinse with boiling water just before putting it on a tea tray and then giving it to the passenger. So they probably would have done that as well. But yeah. Yeah. Chris says, everyone, I'm going to eat back soon. I'm going to be back soon. Take care. Okay. Michael says, same here. They are also great with hot chocolate. I'm thinking the tea biscuits is what you mean. McVitie's. Sam says, do you like McVitie's hobnobs? I've never heard of it, but I wouldn't doubt if it would be difficult for me to get it in the US for a good price, because there's been a lot of stuff that people have suggested. Like, one of my favorite things was Tim Tams, but they cost like $20 or $22 a package. I think one time I bought one for $25. It was pretty expensive for just one package of Tim Tams. So a lot of that stuff is very expensive. Even the McVitie's I get, they should cost, the real price should be just, a couple bucks for a roll of McVitie's digestives. But instead, one roll can cost me about $8, $9 sometimes. So it is incredibly expensive. Incredibly expensive. Also, the reason why I make my own Scottish shortbread is because the Walkers, the actual Scottish shortbread that they sell, is too expensive. Okay, so these should have had time to warm up. We'll bring that back up to boiling real quick. Ozzy says, how about Long Island iced tea? That's not a tea. I've never had a Long Island, actually, but I've heard some things about it. Steve says, sometimes I get acid reflux from coffee. You know what? I do sometimes get like an acidic stomach from coffee. It does kind of... I do get kind of heartburn on occasion from it. Tea doesn't do that for me, so that's another thing I like about tea. Okay, so let's pour all that out. Fill that with boiling water. And then empty out the teapot. Fill that with boiling water. Alright, and then just turned 4:13, so we put the tea in. 4:18 is when I can take the tea out. So as you can see, folks, look at how much time it's taken just to get to this point where I'm starting to brew tea. It's just incredible how much it kind of takes to set up everything. But Years of Seas, Alex says... Wait. Years of Sea says, Alex, what year did the Queen Mary have a second rogue wave hit her? It was in the 1960s. So, technically, in the 1960s, there were 2 different rogue waves that hit the ship. There's been more than 3 in the Queen Mary's lifetime. So she's been hit by a couple. So the first one I can think of for 1960s happened, I believe, in 1962. It was at Christmas. It was during the Christmas season. I have a video about it. My video called Christmas on Queen Mary. If you select that video, it talks about this incident. But it happened on a Christmas, or near Christmas, and a rogue wave, probably about 70 feet tall, struck the starboard bow of the ship, lifting up one of the cowl vents on promenade deck, the forward promenade deck, and sending it smashing through the promenade deck windows just in front of the observation bar. And unfortunately, there was a man and his son that was standing there, and they were covered in lacerations from the glass, but they survived. And they were taken immediately to the infirmary. And but yeah, they survived. But yeah, apparently they were covered in hundreds of lacerations from the glass. And then I think possibly the next year or the year after that, the Queen Mary was struck by another rogue wave that was smaller, probably around 50 feet, that definitely shook the passengers. But the incredible rolling is what inspired Paul Gallico to create the Poseidon Adventure book. So, yeah. Moonzer says, Alex, did you see my question? I don't... No, I'm sorry. Ask it again, because I didn't see it. Okay. Transit Biker says, loose tea is the best I found. I agree. Loose leaf tea is the best. Moonzer says, Alex, when is your Queen Elizabeth video coming out? I have decided to stop saying when, because every time I say when, I can't make the deadline. It is taking a long time, because the Queen Elizabeth, there are less photos and less video of the Queen Elizabeth than there is Queen Mary. There is so much photos and video of Queen Mary, I could make a movie that is 6 hours long without showing the same thing twice. That's how much stuff there is. But the Queen Elizabeth, I'm struggling to make, a 25-minute video on it. There's so few images and video of the Queen Elizabeth. So few. It is ridiculous. So that's the problem I'm having, is I have written this whole script out, narrated the whole thing, and I'm having trouble putting images to it. I have to use a lot of non-ship images in order for me to fill in the gaps. So it is taking a long, long time to do. I've been working on this for almost 2 months now. 2 months, which is a long time. So I don't know. I want to say next week, but every time I say, oh, it's coming out Friday, then I don't make the deadline because it's just taking so much time. The video I released today, just 17 minutes ago, I had to release that because I intended to release the Queen Elizabeth video on Friday, and I couldn't make the deadline. I needed to have a video out on Friday, and I tried as fast as I could to put together the video that just released 17 minutes ago, but then I couldn't release it on Friday because it got a copyright claim, so I had to fix what was wrong with it, and now it's out on the channel. But it is taking, it's a lot of work for the Queen Elizabeth video. There's just so few images of the Queen Elizabeth. I think I pretty much have all that there is of the Queen Elizabeth right now. I have pretty much all that there is. So, it is what it is. Okay, 4:18. It is time for tea. Oh yeah, Lady Grey tea is really delicious. Yeah, I agree, Transit Biker. It's funny, when I first smelled the Lady Grey tea, I thought, oh, this is going to be my favorite, because it smelled so good. And then when I had it, I'm like, this doesn't taste like it smells. It's not bad. Not at all. It's really good. But I would consider it my second favorite, just underneath Earl Grey. I still think Earl Grey tastes better. Earl Grey smells wonderful, but it doesn't smell the same as Lady Grey. Lady Grey smells better. Like, Earl Grey smells floral, smells citrusy, but Lady Grey... I think when I first had Lady Grey, I described it as it smells like you're eating oranges and lemons in a rainy garden. It smells wonderful. So, okay, so let's dump this out and then add our tea. All right. I use these little demi-tasse spoons for the sugar. I like 1.5 demi-tasse spoons of sugar in my tea. And then the milk. Some people say milk first, but it's difficult because some people say milk after. All right. We are ready. That is scalding hot. But it's good. Ozzy says, Alex, your WSTER. Oh, water. I think you were messaging that when my water was done. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, you answered my question correctly. Is it true that if a ship is well maintained, that it can practically last forever? Well, not really forever, but for a couple thousands of years or so. I think it's possible. It's like I always say, if you are willing to invest the time and money to keep maintaining a ship, it'll last for however long you can you want it to last, essentially. But it requires ongoing maintenance. You know, so, but the biggest problem, though, I mean, that goes for anything, not just a ship. Like, if you maintain something well enough and, you know, and you keep maintaining it, it'll keep lasting. But the thing is what happens to a lot of things, including ships, is that eventually it reaches a point where maintaining it and taking care of it ends up costing more money than it's worth. And that's usually how an ocean liner meets its end, is it just becomes too expensive to keep it running. So... Sam says, do you ever shop at World Market? They have a lot of British products at decent prices. I haven't been to a World Market in 3 years. There aren't any where I live. I would have to drive a little bit to go to one. If there is one up here. I haven't seen any up here. But yeah, when I used to live in Southern California, we had World Markets everywhere. But yeah, no, I don't. I live kind of far away from society a little bit, so Yeah, I agree, Transit Biker. Sometimes you never know, like, what the condition of the McVitties will be, or the walkers. Well, actually, a lot of times I've had good luck with the walkers being intact, but there was one time when it arrived completely smashed up. Actually, no, I didn't order that one. The one that was smashed up was one my friend Chris bought me. He went somewhere. I think he went to the UK or something like that, and he bought me a box of walkers and brought it back with him, and it was very smashed up. So yeah. Tyler, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm glad that I was able to help you feel better. I'm usually not very good at consoling people. I'm just not good at that part. But I'm glad that you feel a lot better now. Alright, let's have some McVitties. Pelly, I've never heard of Ottawa. Historical city. Moonzer says, was RMS Queen Elizabeth's pool in use in Port Everglades? Well, she had 3 pools, but none of them were in use in Port Everglades because the ship was only open for tours. It was not open as a hotel. Willem says you should try Rooibos tea. Interesting. Well, Willem, I don't think Queen Elizabeth is forgotten. Actually, in the video I'm making about it, I mentioned that. Because a lot of people say, oh, the Queen Elizabeth is forgotten. She's not as famous as Queen Mary, but she's not forgotten. She is far from forgotten. You know, if you look at all kinds of videos about ocean liners, you'll see in the comments there's always somebody mentioning Queen Elizabeth. People remember the ship. They know the ship. And they often call her underrated or underloved or, you know, or forgotten, but she really is not. You know, I'm on Facebook pages, and, you know, sometimes when I'm looking at updates and things, people are posting photographs of, you know, RMS Queen Elizabeth. So she's less famous than Queen Mary, but she's certainly not forgotten. And she's, in ocean liner communities, she is extremely well known. Historic Production says, Alex, why does YouTube have to do stupid copyright stuff in the first place? It's not YouTube that's doing it, it's the copyright owners. The copyright owners often don't want you to repost stuff that belongs to them. If you try to look at it from their point of view, they go and they put in the effort to create something, and or put in the money to own something, and then you just copy it and put it on your video. That is a violation to them, you know? And so they want to protect what they have. And if that means putting a copyright claim on your channel so that way they earn the money that you would normally earn from the video, then that's what they'll do. My job is to try not to do something that creates a copyright strike. There are regulations for how you can use copyrighted images or audio, and I work within the parameters of that. So what I do on my channel is not illegal. I work within the parameters of the legality of it. So that's what I do. Because I've had trolls that come to my channel and they're like, oh, it's illegal to use copyrighted images. I'm like, it's illegal to use copyrighted images out of the parameters of the fair use policy. I follow fair use as closely as I possibly can. So, because if I had to pay a license for every copyrighted image I use, there would be no channel. There would be none. Because there are photographs of the Queen Mary that I can't find anywhere else, and the only way you can get it is if you buy a license to use it in your video. Some of those licenses can be like $200 for a photograph, for one use of that photograph. If there's video of the Queen Mary, sometimes those licenses can be $1,000 for one use on a YouTube video or on television. And if I had to spend hundreds to thousands of dollars for every image I used of the Queen Mary or some other ship, it's just not possible. It's just really not possible. So, yeah, so it's for that reasons that I try to work within the parameters of fair use policy. So, Jeffrey says, do you have another Disney video in the works? Not currently. Right now I'm working to finish my Queen Elizabeth video. Tyler, thanks for the recommendation. Willem says, Alex, do you see my comments? Yeah, I was responding to your comments earlier. Carl says, how would you ensure that the Mary is always worth enough to keep up? And does the Queen take volunteers? If so, how do they promote it? If not, why not? To answer your first question, how would you ensure the Mary is always worth enough to keep up? Well, first of all, try not to go too deep into that because I can go off on tangents, but you have to keep, as Walt Disney would say, you have to keep the show fresh. You have to always introduce new reasons for people to come. And, that includes for now that the exhibits must be updated to be more modern. Not the content of the exhibit, but the way the exhibit is shown. So they have to look at modern museums and see what they do to keep the audiences that visit the museums engaged. Because we are long past the days when people were satisfied with just walking up to an exhibit and reading a wooden plaque in front of them. That was okay for back then, but today kids need stimulation, adults need stimulation. They need something to do, something that they can interact with, that can get them excited about what they're looking at. And so there needs to be just more updates. I mean, NASA, is it NASA or no? It's Smithsonian has been doing that to their museums, and I think their exhibits look amazing now. They're doing all kinds of little interactive things that help you learn about what it is you're seeing at the museum, and the Queen Mary needs stuff like that. So basically keeping the Queen Mary's exhibits fresh, giving people new reasons to always come. But the other thing too is you look at how much money the Queen Mary makes. You know, the Queen Mary in 2019 earned a profit of $11 million directly to the business. So that was a profit of $11 million. And then when it came to the indirect economic impact, the Queen Mary earned the county of Los Angeles, was it 205? I think it was $205 million annually to the county of Los Angeles just from driving tourism. That accounted for 1/6 of all of LA County's tourism. When you pin that against things like the Getty Museum or, you know, Hollywood or Universal Studios, you know, you look at all those things for the county of Los Angeles that bring in tourism, like the beaches, like Santa Monica Pier, all that stuff, and the Queen Mary accounts for 1/6 of that. That's a huge number. And so, but anyway, you look at how much the ship costs every year to maintain, and then you look at how much it earns every year. So it costs every year $5 million to maintain the Queen Mary. It earns a direct profit of $11 million with a contribution to the county of LA of $205 million. So with those numbers, you know that the ship is actually worth preserving because it is driving the economy. So you have that. But if those numbers become way out of balance, then you know you have a problem. As for if the Queen Mary accepts volunteers, they do not. They never have. The reason why is because the city of Long Beach bought the Queen Mary to use it as a museum. They were going to build something called the Jacques Cousteau Museum of the Sea. And originally it was going to be a building in downtown, but they realized the building would cost too much. That's when the Queen Mary, they heard, was going to retire. And when they realized how much it would cost to buy the Queen Mary and convert the ship, they realized they could use the ship as the museum, and that would cost them less money. And that's why they bought the Queen Mary in the first place. Yeah. So then they brought in all kinds of companies to run the Queen Mary. They were so distracted with operating the ship because the different companies that were operating the Queen Mary were not able to... They were stepping on each other's toes. They were not, working very well together. So they brought in the Jack Rather Corporation, and Jack Rather Corporation became the first company to 100% control the entire Queen Mary and run its operations. And they did a very good job while Jack Rather was still alive. And that's when they created what's called the Master Lease. And the Master Lease was an agreement that gave Jack Rather, I think it was 66 years. It actually could have been 99 years at the time. It gave the Jack Rather Corporation either 66 or 99 years to operate the Queen Mary. And of course, after Jack Rather Corporation was bought out by Disney, Disney had the lease, and then they sold the lease to another company, which sold the lease to another company, which sold the lease. And it went down on and on and on until Urban Commons. And then when Urban Commons went bankrupt in 2020 and then lost the ship in 2021, that master lease was no longer in effect, and the city of Long Beach had 100% control of the ship after that, and they still do. That master lease made it so the companies that operated the Queen Mary had all the responsibility of maintaining it. Those companies are corporations. Corporations are not used to having volunteers come and maintain something for free. That's just not how they operate. They're not used to that. And so right now that the city of Long Beach is back in control, they have not yet established a way for volunteers to help the ship, because right now their biggest concern is getting the ship reopened and, and fully functional again as an attraction. And and then after that they'll figure out what they can do, and so there are plans to try to figure that out. But yeah. John, yeah, I know there's... I figured if there was a world market, it's probably in Portland. I don't like going to Portland. I live near Portland, but when I say near, I mean it's like the closest big city to where I am. So I am not anywhere near Portland. So I would not go all the way down there. Plus, I don't like Portland. When I go into Portland, I don't feel safe at all. So I don't go into Portland. Actually, it was kind of funny because several weeks ago, my family and I were thinking about going to this one restaurant, and we were so close to actually going there that that the day of, I remember reading on the news that just 3 nights before, some people had walked out of that restaurant and got shot. Right outside the restaurant. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to that restaurant. So, yeah, I do not like going into Portland. Daniel says, hey, Alex, I didn't hear your answer, but does the horn of Queen Mary in Long Beach annoy people? It can, I mean, but, everybody's annoyed by something, It's not like there's an overwhelming, like, oh, I hate it, it's not like that. But there are going to be people who like something and then people who hate something. So, it is what it is, Yeah, Steve, licensing is a total ripoff. I cannot stand it. Gosh, I think there is a nerve in my back that's being pinched. I can feel it. And it's starting to hurt. Sam says, and I see that the lovable Forney is running around again. It certainly is. To be honest, the reason why I run the Forney so much is because it has better electrical pickup, and the Porter doesn't. The Porter has great electrical pickup, but the problem is it just isn't good enough. And so until I'm able to put that special product I was talking about on the tracks and have that on there, then the Porter won't run correctly. So I just get annoyed. Every time I run the Porter, I have to clean the tracks, and I don't want to do that. I'm waiting until I can get to the point where I can put that product on the tracks, and then the Porter will run correctly. So, yeah. Brian says, I know it does not work like this. Why doesn't YouTube just ask for a yearly fee for a license? Because each individual company wants a certain amount of money for their product. I mean, that's like going to a grocery store and saying, why isn't there an annual membership where I can just get all this stuff, it's all covered by the membership? Well, it doesn't work that way. Every company that provides its products to the grocery store wants a certain amount of money for it, So it can't happen at all. The people that license that stuff to YouTube, well, they don't even license it to YouTube. It's just they tell YouTube, hey, this is my stuff. It's copyrighted. If anybody posts anything like it, make sure that they do this, or that with it. And so, yeah, you can't. It's because everybody sets their own prices. So, Willem says, why do some people call... I'm guessing you're trying to say Los Angeles. Why do they call it Los Angeles? Or why don't they call it Los Angeles versus Los Angeles? It's all just a matter of how people pronounce something. You know, if you're Hispanic, you might say Los Angeles, right? You might say Los Angeles. But, you know, not everybody is. You know, like, you can't force people to... There's, like, people who are Vietnamese that live there who can't pronounce it like that, you know? They're gonna say Los Angeles. And that's, you know... And, so, you know, there's... You ever watch, like, the YouTube channel Daily Dose of Internet, right? He's, like, super famous. You watch it, at the very end, he says, later. He says, thank you all for watching. See you all very soon. Later, right? But the way he pronounces later almost sounds like he's saying letter, like a letter you read. He's like, letter, you know? But that's just how people pronounce things, you know? So if someone says Los Angeles or Los Angeles, I mean, it's just all how someone pronounces them. It's not incorrect. It's the same name. So as long as you spell it correctly, then you're doing fine, you know? I get so passionate about the way pronunciations are done because a lot of people don't realize, like, I pronounce things differently. Like, a lot of people don't realize it. They think I probably have a Southern California accent, but I do have kind of a varied accent. So it's very subtle and people don't realize it, but it does affect the way I pronounce things sometimes, and the way I talk, and so, yeah, I got picked on a lot by the way I talk. Jeffrey says, did you ever go to Knott's Berry Farm or get into Knott's history? I've been to Knott's Berry Farm twice in my life. I absolutely despise it. I hate it. First of all, I'm not a theme park person at all. I liked with a D. I liked Disneyland for most of my life. And I got really into Disneyland history. But I do not like theme parks or amusement parks at all. I don't visit them. But I've been to Knott's Berry Farm twice in my life as a kid, both times. Don't enjoy it. I don't like it. There isn't a single thing about Knott's Berry Farm I like, unfortunately. I do know a lot about Knott's Berry Farm's history because I needed to research the history to do various Disneyland videos, because a lot of people don't know, Walter Knott and Walter Disney were good friends. And so for doing certain Disney videos, I needed to do research on Knott's Berry Farm history. But I'm not at all passionate about Knott's Berry Farm history, so I'm just kind of indifferent to it. Miles says, hi Alex, just finished and enjoyed watching your latest video. I like how you used the 401 demo footage. Oh, awesome, thanks. Yeah, it's such a good tool now to use that footage when talking about Titanic or ocean liners in general. Sam, I don't tell people where I live because of the the death threats that I get. So I don't tell people where I live, but I do live... The closest big city to me is Portland. Well, I mean, it's not that I don't give it a chance. I go to Portland on occasion. I just don't like to go to Portland. Since I've lived up here in Oregon, I've probably been to Portland maybe 8 or 10 times. Maybe more. I can't remember. And usually when I go, we do something fun. We go to the Japanese garden. We go to the Rose Garden. I went to that Science and Industry Museum. You know, I've walked through downtown a couple of times. Been to restaurants in Portland. Been to bakeries in Portland. That kind of thing. Been to several parks in Portland. So it's not like I'm never going back. Like, I have to. I live near Portland. Sometimes I need to go there for certain things, or sometimes if, you know, I'm with friends or family and we just want to do something fun, you know, Portland has some of those things. So it's not like I'm never going back again. I kind of have to be able to go back occasionally. But I just don't like it because I don't feel safe. You know, I've been all around Portland. I do not feel safe at all. At all. So, it's just gotten really, really bad. Since the year 2020, it just took a dive, you know? So, but yeah. But yeah, I live close enough to Portland that a lot of times I do have to go there. Miles. No, the reason why the person got shot wasn't because they didn't tip enough. It's because the people saw them tip, and they tipped a big amount of money. And the person thought, I want that person's money. And they shot them for it. Robbed them. And robbed their car. They broke into the car, robbed the car too. And it took a long time for the police to respond because there isn't enough police force. They are running low on people. And so they often just don't respond. There was a street takeover a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple days ago. I actually don't remember anymore. But there was a street takeover, right? Thousands of people showed up in East Portland for this. It was huge. And normally the police will break up a street takeover. But the thing was that the Portland police were like, yeah, we do not have enough people to break that up. And they were like, and even if we tried to break it up, we were afraid it would turn violent. And frankly, we can't spare the cops to be killed over something like that, you know? So they decided not to do it. I don't blame them. I mean, I feel bad for the people that have to deal with living next to a street takeover. But, you know, the police in Portland are like running very thin. There aren't very many of them, and the job doesn't pay very much. So it's like, you know, it's sad. Carl said, did the QE2 ever meet the Queen Mary in Long Beach? As far as I know, no. The QE2 never met the Queen Mary in Long Beach. Tarkus Mark, that sounds awesome. I'm not really into video games usually, so I can't say, but yeah, that is pretty cool. So if anybody else is interested in seeing it, you know, you could let them know. Top Impressive Line says, do I think that when the Queen Mary 2 is retired, will it be turned into a floating hotel like Queen Mary or QE2? Most likely it's going to be scrapped. I mean, that is the most likely outcome for all ships. Would I like to see it saved? Yeah, because it's very possible that it might be the very last ocean liner ever built. There's a possibility of that, and it'd be nice for the last ocean liner ever built to be preserved. So that way people can say this was the last one. Let me drink some tea. But it is very unlikely, because what made them save the Queen Mary and the QE2 and the SS United States was those ships built up a really famous reputation for themselves. They became really famous ships, and it had almost nothing to do with the fact that they were ocean liners. It was just the fact that they developed a really big reputation. And so that's why those ships were saved from the breaker's hammer. But Queen Mary 2, most people don't even realize it's an ocean liner. Most people think it's just another cruise ship. So to them, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You know, only the ocean liner community really cares about the Queen Mary 2. So it would take something of extreme importance to build up the Queen Mary 2's reputation for anyone to come and save it from the breaker's hammer. Chris, no, I haven't heard of Gordon Bowen's. Pretty neat. Alex Seaside of Bulgaria says, why didn't you answer my question? I'm trying, you guys. There are a lot of comments to get through. Let me see. Alex, do you think... Okay, first of all, Alex Seaside of Bulgaria, please don't be offended if I don't read a comment. A lot of times it's because I just didn't see it, okay? But otherwise, do I think the first two Cunard Queens shortened World War II a little? Personally, I think so. I even remember, I hope correctly, that Churchill said that. He also traveled to the U.S. in the Queen Mary. Yeah, I mean, it's without a doubt that Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth had shortened the war by a year, at least. There is very little doubt that that is true. Because, I mean, the two ships together transported almost 2 million troops across the world. 2 million. That's a big number. And and Queen Mary carried the majority of them. But also the Queen Mary's efforts, you know, in Operation Bolero and, you know, helping to win the first battle at El Alamein, all that kind of stuff was really important to the war. And then, of course, transporting all those Americans to the European theater for their war effort, you know, all of that was extremely important to the war. So yeah, it is without a doubt that Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth shortened the war by a year. And yeah, Winston Churchill said as much. Hello, Victor. Hello, Emperor Shao Kahn. Pelly, yeah. See, you know what I mean. Like, it's just not. It's like the big cities now are just not as safe as they were. Like, there was a time when, like, in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of the big cities were just not safe to be in. You know, everybody knows, you know, what New York was like from the 70s all the way through to the 90s. It was just not safe. But then there was this big push in the 90s all the way through the 2000s to make the cities very tourist friendly. And so they tried as hard as they could to make the cities safer. And yeah, there was this great period of time when you could visit San Francisco and the crime rate was down very low compared to historical, you know, records and stuff like that. But now we're reaching a point where that crime is going up in cities all over the world again. Well, all over the Western world again. There are certain cities in the Eastern Hemisphere and stuff like that that are just the same as ever. But yeah, so it is pretty sad. Tyler, yeah, I agree. Chris, that's pretty cool. You have a artwork from him. Was it very expensive? Transit Biker says, Alex, did you hear about the SS United States updated plan yet? Did they post one? I haven't heard of them posting one. I'm doing great, Emperor. How about you? Alright, Steve. Enjoy your dinner. Oh, interesting, Willem. I haven't heard of Margate, the city. Top impressive line. No, I haven't heard of the MS Hans Hedtoft. I hope I pronounced that right. So, Chris says, hey, Alex, it would be interesting to see people's reactions if I was extremely wealthy, rich, and building a modern-day clone copy of RMS Britannic 2. Yeah, pretty interesting. I think a lot of people would like to see a classic liner again, you know? The closest thing you can get is going to old ships like SS Keewatin or something like that, and that kind of gives you an idea of those classic liners. Or Queen Mary. Queen Mary is another good idea of 1930s classic liners. You got those representations, but it would be nice to see another famous liner, you know, recreated like Olympic. I wouldn't want someone to recreate Titanic. There's just something about that is just a little wrong about recreating a ship that, you know, so many people tragically died on. There's just something weird about that. And turning it into a tourist attraction, that's weird. But if you recreate Olympic, I think that gives you all the things you want. It's so close to what Titanic looked like. So you still get that experience, but then it's a different ship, you know, technically. So I would like to see them recreate Olympic. And then they can put tributes to Titanic all inside, talking about what happened and stuff like that. So Transit Biker says, Alex, they are now planning to make most of the SS United States into a museum and event space instead of retail hotel offices. This is far more financially feasible. But that's weird. Who wants to do that? Like, who has walked in and said, I'll pay for that? Like, as far as I know, like, I don't know. They say that there's some company that partnered with them back in 2019 or something like that, or 2020. But they haven't come up with any solid plans since then. And what are they going to do right now? Because their biggest problem right now is the ship is going to be kicked off of that pier because the people who own the pier want them to pay more money, and they're having trouble earning enough money to pay for it. So why are they focused on what they're going to turn the ship into if the ship doesn't even have a home right now? Like, that's what I'm concerned about. I'm surprised they didn't, like, mention that. They didn't talk about that. Top impressive line says, Alex, any plans to do a video on the sinking of the MV Wilhelm Gustloff? Maybe in the future. When the inspiration strikes me. I only make videos on stuff that it tugs at me, and I need to make a video on it. Willem says, the last Titanic survivor said, the Titanic is my father's grave. I don't want anyone to mess with it. Yeah. That's what some people say. And then other people are kind of like, well, my family died there, and it'd be nice if, they could be remembered by building more museums and stuff like that. So there's people that feel either way. Although I will say the majority of them think it's a graveyard and it should be left as is. Miles says, isn't someone building a full-size Titanic replica in Asia somewhere? Heard about it for years. So there were technically 2 that you could say were built in, or were going to be built in Asia. There was one for a theme park. It was not going to be a real ship, but it was going to be a theme park attraction. And that one, the theme park went bankrupt and they never completed it. So they still have like a basic shape of it sitting there in what used to be the theme park. That's not going to continue. They've already, it's been long abandoned for the last 2 years. So, and then there was, I always forget his name. Then there was that crazy Australian man who wanted to build a cruise ship version of Titanic to sell tickets for people to stay on. I have always said since he first announced that thing, it will not happen. It's not financially feasible. It doesn't give you the return you think it's going to give you. And lo and behold, he could never find enough investors to make it a reality. And so that was canceled 2 years ago as well. Or no, yeah, 2 years ago. It was canceled 2 years ago. So, yeah. And that neither is happening. Alex, Seaside of Bulgaria, says, do you think the Cunard line will stop existing soon? I think it depends, but let's not forget that Cunard's part of the corporation. Also, we know whether there's going to be another ship built. No, I have no reason to believe that Cunard will stop existing soon. There's no evidence to suggest that, because they're building another ship. A cruise line that is in dire straits, that is not having a lot of passengers. They don't invest money in another ship. They save money and try to rebuild the ships they have to be more relevant. But no, they are doing just fine. The Queen Mary 2 gets booked a whole year in advance. That means that there's so many people that want to have a voyage on the Queen Mary 2. It gets booked a year in advance. The other ships, some of them get booked 6 months in advance. So they're very, very popular ships. Cunard will keep growing as a cruise line. Whether they make another ocean liner after the Queen Mary 2, it's too early to say. That ship has at least another 20 years left. The Queen Mary 2. Another 20 years left at least. So it's really too early to say whether they're going to build another ocean liner afterwards or not. But even if they don't, they're doing very well as a cruise company and expanding their empire. So, they're doing very well. Clive Palmer, thank you, Kevin, and Chris. Clive Cluster. Yeah, thank you, Kevin and Chris. Yeah, Clive Palmer is the man who wanted to build a cruise ship version of Titanic, and it's just kind of silly. Carl, there could be Henry Hall playing. I don't hear the music because it's on the computer software, so it's playing for you guys, but I don't hear the music. But it could be because the playlist was put together by my friend Shiloh from the HBC channel. So yeah, it definitely is probably Henry Hall. What do I think was the better shipbuilding hub, Belfast or Glasgow? It's really hard to say because both built the most famous ships in the world. You've got in Belfast, they built the Olympic, the Titanic, the Britannic. Those are arguably some of the most famous ships in the world. Particularly Titanic, of course, is the most famous ship in the world. But then you've got, over in Glasgow, you've got or more specifically Clydebank, you've got the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, and the QE2. Those are also among the most famous ships in the world. When Queen Mary retired in 1967, the Queen Mary was the most famous ship in the world at the time. So, it's hard to say because they both had these really great ships that they built. So I couldn't pit them against each other. I really couldn't. Daniel, yes, I have bullfrog snot. Ugh. Well, it's in here somewhere. I have bullfrog snot for the trains, but the thing is my O-scale trains do not use traction tires, so I don't need it. I used it back when I had N-scale, and the thing was that it's not an easy product to use. Like, I will state that right now. It is not an easy product to use. If it does not apply perfectly, your train will be rocking and shaking down the rails. It's really ridiculous. So I did not enjoy it. I put it on some of my locomotives, and it made them shake like crazy because I could not get it to go down perfectly even. Anyway, these trains, the whole reason why I bought O-scale is because I didn't like traction tires on my locomotives. It ruins everything. So O-scale is so big that the locomotives do not need traction tires. So yeah, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Boy, what happened to... here we go. Brian says, I'm just curious. I know tea stains coffee cups. How does the Queen Mary China hold up against tea stains? I used to use just a little Clorox to clean the cups, but I know this might be an odd question. It's actually not an odd question. The tea does stain the teapot. So I can't really show you with this because there's still tea inside, but there are some tea stains around the edges at the bottom. And you can get rid of it by scrubbing it off, or there's liquids that you can buy to clean out your teapots and teacups. And normally I would do all of the above, but because these are so rare and so fragile, I had to really think about, is it so bad that they're a little bit stained? And so I thought, okay, well, I will still clean the tea stains off on occasion, but not as often as I would with a modern tea set, because a modern tea set, if it breaks, I mean, that's sad, but you can buy another one, right? You can't buy more of this. They don't make it anymore. So I told myself, I'm like, okay, the tea stains will stay until they get bad enough that I feel like I will clean it. And so I think since I've had these, I've cleaned the tea stains off maybe twice since I've bought this. And I've been doing these tea times for a year now. So in a year, I've cleaned the tea stains off twice. of course, people are wondering, like, people who don't drink tea are like, what? You only wash this? No, I wash this every time I drink tea out of it. I use soap. I use a soft sponge. I'd never scrub. Never, ever scrub. Because you can eventually wear away the glazing, and the glazing is what keeps it together. So, yeah, eventually tea stains will build up, and when they get bad enough, then I clean them off. But I try not to do it too often because I don't want to wear out the tea set. But yeah, they do sell like chemicals and things that can clean it off, and then you can just scrub it if you want to. But yeah, so that's part of the reason why when I do take my trip on the Queen Mary 2, I want to try to purchase a Queen Mary 2 Wedgwood tea set, like the whole tea set. So that way I can use this tea set less and less, and therefore less likely chance that it'll wear out. You know, I can preserve it for longer. Because I don't really consider myself the owner of this Cunard tea set. I want this tea set to last longer than me. I want it to keep going. I want someone else to have it after I'm done with it, you know. And so I think of myself as really the custodian who's taking care of this, you know, these artifacts. And so, you know, I've got to try to take good care of it. Transit Biker says, in terms of replicas of sunken ships, I think only sections of it should be reproduced as an example tribute so people have a learning experience instead of purely profit making. I agree, but then I see things like that Titanic museum, the one that has like the whole bow of the ship. That when you look at the outside and the inside of that museum, it doesn't come off as sincere. It comes off as like a total like they're trying to make a theme park out of it kind of thing, and I don't like that. It just bothers me. Pigeon Forge, that's what I call it. Pigeon Forge. Willem says, why did Cunard and White Star compete so much for speed and luxury? I actually have a video all about that. So it's called, let me see. Oh gosh, what was it called? It was called, Did They Sacrifice Speed or Luxury? That's what it was called. Anyway, if you go to my playlists, my Ocean Liner videos playlist, it's one of the newer videos made, and it talks about the speed versus luxury thing. And it's really interesting. Unfortunately, not a lot of people saw that video, which surprised me because I totally would have thought people would have found that video interesting. So, but yeah, I highly suggest that video of mine. Again, it's on the Ocean Liners playlist on my channel. Transit Biker says money. Yep. James Palms, how's it going? Hey, buddy. Great to see you're still doing the live streams. Any thoughts on visiting or moving back to Southern California? I had thought about visiting Southern California this year, but unfortunately I'm saving up for my trip to the UK, so I actually cannot afford to go down to Southern California this year. So I will not be visiting anytime soon. I definitely do not want to move back to Southern California. I love it up here. I love being near the forests and the trees and the nature and the mountains. I am having way too much fun up here, and I love the weather up here too. So I do not miss Southern California. I miss the Queen Mary, and at times I miss Disneyland. but I do not miss Southern California, so I am very happy up here. Top and Present Line says, Alex, exactly 111 years ago today is when the RMS Titanic left Belfast for her sea trial. Really? Today? Wow. So that's something I don't know. I've thought about starting up something where, like, I could post, like, today in history. But the funny thing is, I'm not good at that. I'm really not. Like, I'm good at making videos, but I'm not good at keeping track of history on a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, I think there's apps where you can, like, put that stuff in a calendar, and then eventually when you get back to it, you kind of find things of it. But it sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of work. Alex in Seaside, Bulgaria says, I know that your favorite ocean liner is the Queen Mary, but in general, do you like more Cunard or White Star ships? When I counted what ships I like, it turned out that I liked Cunard ships more. So I don't want people to think that I'm biased because, oh, Cunard's better. It's not that. I just found out that when I counted all the ships, I liked Cunard ships a lot more than White Star ships. I have more Cunard favorites than I have White Star favorites. So by that technicality, I suppose you could say I prefer Cunard. And plus, Cunard is still around, and so I can kind of relate to it because it's still around, you know? Like, when I take my Queen Mary 2 voyage, I'm going to be so ecstatic because I'll be sailing on an ocean line company that was pretty much the first, it was technically the first steam ocean liner company, but also it had among the most famous ships in the world, Mauretania, Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, QE2, you know, all that stuff. So, yeah, I love it. Willem says, Alex, what was the first ship you found out about? And what was the first ship you found out that wanted to make you a historian? So it's kind of complicated. The first ship I ever... don't know what that was. What was the first ship I ever found out about? That's hard to say, because, I mean, the first ship I ever found out about, I don't think was an ocean liner. I think it was an aircraft carrier. The first ship I ever, like, heard about and knew anything about was, believe it or not, the USS Enterprise. CVN 65, I think it is. USS Enterprise is the first ship I knew anything about because my dad was and still is a big fan of that ship. But then I would say the second ship I ever found out about was Titanic because when I was a kid, my grandfather took me and my sister to see Titanic in the theaters. He took us to a family theater that cut out the bad parts and even replaced some of the language. But we went to see it in a family theater with my grandfather, and I loved the movie. It came out in 97. But I never researched Titanic. I was not I was not obsessed. I wasn't like, oh, I gotta know about Titanic. Like, I was just like, oh, Titanic looks cool. You know, that's just what it was to me. I was never really interested in ocean liners. Ever. So, it just never, my biggest interest was Disneyland for many years. From 2002 to, pretty much 2022. For 20 whole years, I was a big fan of Disneyland. And I became a Disneyland historian just through all the knowledge that I learned. And that's how I started my channel. My channel started with me doing only Disneyland videos. And then in the year 2020, I was hanging out with friends. My friends are like, hey, let's go to visit the Queen Mary. And I was kind of like, I don't really feel like... I've been to the Queen Mary a few times in my life. My dad took me when I was a kid. but I never like had a deep connection with it. And I told my friends, I'm like, I don't know about Queen Mary. And my friend Chris was like, come on, it's really cool. I think, you know, we haven't been there together. I think it'd be really neat to go visit. So I said, all right. Well, I know that the Disney company once had the lease for the Queen Mary, and so I thought I could tie this into my Disney channel by talking about the years that Disney had the ship. And so the night before we went to visit the Queen Mary, I did some quick Google researching, very shallow researching, didn't do very good work on it. But what I did learn I thought was pretty interesting, and I thought, wow, I didn't know all this stuff about the ship. Like, that's pretty cool. And then we went to visit the Queen Mary, and on the outside I was kind of like, wow, this is a nice big ship, and this will be a good vlog to film. And then the second I stepped on the ship, and I saw the old wood veneers, and it smelled like a library, which I love libraries. It smelled like a library, and it was all Art Deco. And immediately I was just like, oh my god, I love this ship. It's so beautiful. I loved it more than Titanic. Instantly. And like I said, I'd been on the Queen Mary a few times before in my life, but never fell in love with it. It's just, all of a sudden, that final visit in January of 2020, everything changed. It just snapped. Like an instant I stepped aboard, I was just transported to another place in time. And the ship was in rough shape, you know, it wasn't being taken care of the way it should have. But underneath the dirt and the grime, I could see this beautiful vessel that was well loved and well cherished all over the world. And I just became obsessed with it. And I started researching Queen Mary. So Queen Mary was technically the first ocean liner I ever researched and tried to learn about. I decided a couple months later that I wanted to start introducing Queen Mary videos on my channel because I wanted to help the ship. The ship had to close for the pandemic. There was a lot of rumors that the ship was going to be scrapped or something like that, and I wanted to instill a sense of hope in people who loved that ship. I loved that ship, and I truly did not believe it was going to be scrapped anytime soon, you know? So I wanted to instill a sense of hope and teach more people and get more people interested about a ship that I was interested in. And so I met up with my friend Shiloh. I had actually met him on the ship by accident before I even knew who he was. And then months later, when I decided, you know, after I moved up here to Oregon, I decided I want to make some Queen Mary videos. And I magically, you know, Shiloh and I got in touch, and I was like, wait a minute, you're that guy that I met on the ship. Like, how crazy is that? And he knew so much about the ship, and he taught me all the basics that I started to learn. I spent a whole year researching the Queen Mary, so that way, when I did my first video about the ship, it would be as accurate as I possibly could do it. So I spent a solid year just doing research on the Queen Mary. And I started making videos after that. And then from the research of Queen Mary, I learned about Queen Elizabeth, I learned about RMS Mauretania, I learned about QE2, learned about Lusitania, learned more about other ships, oceanic and stuff like that. And so slowly my knowledge is expanding. It's kind of like that moment stepping aboard the Queen Mary was like the Big Bang. And then after that, it's just the expansion of my knowledge. So, pretty neat. That's the short version of the story. James Palms. Yes, I do watch Mike Brady's channel. I think he does very, very well. I love his videos. Very entertaining. So, and he is he's among a group of channels that I watch, actually. So I also watch Historic Travels on occasion because he talks a lot about Titanic. And while I'm not obsessed with Titanic, it is very interesting to learn all these little tidbits about it. So yeah, I watch all those folks. Yeah, subscribe to them. I will say, though, that I am a very, very busy person. So sometimes people go, oh, did you watch this video by this person? And I'm like, I unfortunately could not get to it. Like, I barely have time sometimes to even watch the videos I want to see. So, because I'm always working on my channel or I'm doing something else. So, but yeah, really great group of folks that do ocean liner videos. A really great group of folks. I mean, it's just fantastic. There is this great camaraderie I found in the ocean liner community where everybody is really supportive of each other. Everybody's really excited to teach each other something new. I've never seen anything like that in a fan community. A lot of times fan communities of different communities can be pretty harsh. There's a lot of like, oh, you don't know enough, so you're an idiot kind of mentality. But with the ocean liner community, I get a lot of people, like, even when I'm wrong about something, I get people that are like, hey, you know, if you look here and you look here, you'll see that this is the correct information to that. And I'm like, that is fantastic. I love how friendly people are, because then I can go and I can research that and then find out and then, you know, and then see what I need to change or what I need to do. And I'm still learning about all this stuff. And when I feel like I'm confident that I know enough about something, then I make a video about it. So, but yeah, I love the ocean liner community. They're such nice people. Chris says, hey Alex, most of my favorite ships are from the White Star Line. Yeah, very popular ocean line company. James Palm says, you only miss Disneyland. Sometimes I thought you were one of the biggest Disneyland fans on planet Earth. I miss Disneyland every day. I've only been a few times in my life. I used to be the biggest Disneyland fan on Earth, but, you know, the thing is that over the course of the last 10 years or so, the park has just changed dramatically. Both the way it looks and the way it operates have just changed so dramatically from when I was a kid. It's just not the same anymore. I still appreciate Disneyland history, but I don't appreciate modern Disneyland the way I used to. You know, I always talk about the things I miss. When I was a kid, I would go to Disneyland, and one of my favorite things was getting a churro. Why? Because they used to make them fresh at their churro carts. They had the dough. The machine extracted the dough. They took the dough. They deep fried it. They covered it in the sugar and stuff like that. And it was fresh and it was made just for you. And now today they just open a frozen box full of pre-made churros by a third-party company. And then they throw them in a toaster and then they hand them to you. And they're like stale and crunchy and whatever. Well, I mean, they should be crunchy, but they taste, or the texture is very stale. It just doesn't feel like a real churro. So, you know, things like that. Going through the park, and every shop used to have completely unique items from the other shops. You know, you would go to New Orleans Square, and there was an antique shop in New Orleans, real antiques in New Orleans Square. There was, you know, a shop where you could get perfumes custom made for you. Although I never bought perfumes, but you know, like if your mother or your sister or your girlfriend or something, they wanted a custom perfume that nobody else had, you could get it made for you at Disneyland. You know, so there used to be so much uniqueness to it. And now it's just this big cash grab, you know, like they've streamlined everything to the, you know, upteenth degree to make it as profitable as possible, which I can't. I am a person who does like capitalism. I really am. And I agree with capitalism, but unfortunately it's not a perfect thing. And that's one of the effects of capitalism, is sometimes you get companies that lose their heart and they become all about money. So they got rid of all of Disneyland's uniqueness to make more money. And so, unfortunately, it's just not the same place I used to enjoy. So, Transit Biker says, here's a question I've not seen you address before. Do you have a favorite P&O steam liner? What is P&O again? It's Pacific something. Pacific and Orient, is it? Pacific and Orient. I don't know any, to be totally honest. I don't know any P&O liners at all. I've been so focused on British liners, because those are my favorites. I've been so focused on British liners, on, you know, transatlantic ships, that I haven't really been able to learn anything new about other ocean line companies. Sorry, all this talking is making me like kind of like lose my voice a little bit. Chris says, "Hey Alex, most of my favorite ships are from White Star Line." Oh, I already read that one. Carl says, "What are your thoughts on ChatGPT and how do you think it could assist your researching, script writing, etc. in the future?" I laugh because I do use it. I don't use it for research necessarily, because ChatGPT is not very good at getting you accurate information. ChatGPT, I mean, this is a bad example, but you could tell it 1 + 1 = 4. And on occasion, it will agree with you, because it'll find stuff that supports what you're saying. And so that's kind of what happens with ChatGPT. So if you try to go like, okay, like for instance, one of the videos that's in the works is a video that compares the Queen Mary's size to things. And I told ChatGPT, I said, give me every famous monument, or at least give me 10 famous monuments around the world that are under 180 feet tall, because I was trying to make a point. And it gave me all kinds of monuments that were nowhere near 180 feet tall. I said its maximum has to be 180 feet tall. It could be shorter than that. And, you know, I tried several times to reword my question and get it more specific. But every time it gave me monuments that were way over that. And it just wasn't good at it. So sometimes if I said, you know, 180 feet tall, it would give me something that was 180 meters or less. And so I was like, that is not what I'm looking for. So it's not very good in that case. But sometimes what I use ChatGPT for is if I have a sentence and I type it out and I'm like, I don't like the way that sentence sounds. It doesn't sound right. I'll send it to ChatGPT. I'll be like, can you rewrite this sentence so it is formal, it brings the points, you know, correctly, and then it words it in such a way that is grammatically correct, and then it'll do that for me. And then I can take that and put that sentence in. So the most recent way I used that was in my video about the Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland. That's one of my most recent videos. And there was one sentence in there I had ChatGPT write for me, because I told it, I said the towers and turrets were manufactured in the opera house. Then they were lifted by crane onto the top of the castle. And then I said a few more things. And I said the sentence, I was having trouble writing the sentence because it ended up becoming like a paragraph long. And I'm like, I cannot have a paragraph meant to explain these very few things. So I told it all the things I wanted it to know. And I said, this needs to be a sentence under so many words. And then it went and wrote it out for me. And I said, that sounds a little too formal. It needs to be in between formal and in between informal. And so then it rewrote it and gave it to me. And that's the sentence I used in my video. So things like that can be really, really helpful for my videos. And I've found more and more uses for ChatGPT. But there will never, at least not for now, become any time when I can have all my script written by ChatGPT, because it requires actual research to be done first, so you know what's correct and what's incorrect. Because like I said, with ChatGPT, sometimes you could tell it 1 + 1 = 4, and it will give you all the reasons to support that, and you know it's wrong. So you got to be careful with ChatGPT. So, let's see. So I'm scrolling back up to find the last... Okay, here we go. Wait, what? So Daniel says, hey, Alex, the only person I hate in Titanic 1997, the movie, is the guy who shows older Rose the 3D video of the ship sinking and has the audacity to say, pretty cool, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't hate him for that, you know, but you can see the point of it, which is that, I mean, it's a good example because it shows that everybody who was on that research vessel was so obsessed with the details and the information, they forgot the human aspect of Titanic. And that's the same for people today. There are so many people today who are like, oh yeah, Titanic was the best and so cool, and look at all these fun facts and information, and they go, oh, it's just so neat, and I would love to see more Titanics built. And I'm like, you're forgetting that there were some people who died on it, and they lived, you know, their last moments in misery, you know. So sometimes you got to have that little bit, you know, to remember this isn't just some big cool ship. It was an event that changed the world. So yeah, you're right. That is a good example. Uh-oh, where'd it go? John C., I've been to Multnomah Falls. Pretty neat. I've also been to several of the waterfalls along the Columbia Gorge Highway. There's several. There's like Latourell Falls, Bridal Falls. Just several. I've seen a bunch of them along that. So yeah, I definitely have already visited a lot of that. Bonneville Dam, haven't been there yet. I'm still exploring. Like, I'm not done with like the Portland area. I'm still exploring all that stuff. Willem says, how do you research your videos? I have books. I start with the books first because they are a physical copy that I can take notes from. Then I go and I look for articles online. There are lots of fans who have done research and then put articles online. And the thing about articles is sometimes they can be wrong. So what I do is I try to find at least 3 articles about the same type of thing, and then I will cross-reference them. That is very important for research. I cannot stress it enough. People that do research, you have to find at least, if you can, 3 examples, and then cross-reference them, and you will find inaccuracies and accuracies, and then you can figure out which one you think is the real truth. And then, you know, of course, you keep all that information. You can try to put that in your video and show like where you got the information from. But that's one of the things I do. I look at articles, and then sometimes, depending on the subject of the video, I will look at blueprints, I will look at plans, I will look at testimonies. So it is a long process. I go through all this information and then compile it. I take notes and then I put it all into a script. Well, actually, I put it all into a bullet point thing on my computer. And then from there, I take those bullet points and then I write them into a script. And I do that because I like to be a little bit creative. Like, you'll notice my videos are not always like bullet point information. It is somewhat exaggerated. It is somewhat emotional. That's what I like to do with my videos. So I think that's what makes my channel unique among others, is that my videos are emotional. And so that's what I do with mine. So that's how I do my research, is just lots of cross-referencing, reading books, reading articles, looking at plans and blueprints and studies and testimonies, and then I kind of compile all that into what I have. I used to send my scripts to people who were more knowledgeable than me and have them read my scripts and give me correct information. But I quickly learned that a lot of those people don't have the time, and they wouldn't get to my scripts for a whole month, and yet I only had a week to get the video out. So I've had to stop doing that. So I still have people today that are like, oh, send me your script and I'll read it. And then they don't get to it in time. And sometimes I need to have the video out the next day. So, you know, it becomes incredibly inconvenient. So I can't do that anymore. But I do my best to get it right. And then if a year passes and I find out there's a lot of inaccuracies, like what happened with my original The Rolling Mary video, a year later I came back and redid that video with more accurate information, and I added more stuff to it to make the video longer. So that's what I do. Wow, it's already 5:45. That makes sense because I've been on here for a while. Alec is India House, or Alexis India House, says more Disneyland videos soon. I can't tell you exactly when. I mean, if I say soon, it might be like a month from now. But then if I, say like a month from now, who knows, maybe 2 weeks from now, I'm like, oh, let's put out a Disney video. So there will be more to come, but I can't promise when and how because my schedules are so crazy just trying to get videos out in a timely manner. But there will be more Disneyland videos. My favorite Disneyland ride. The Disneyland Railroad is my favorite Disneyland ride. Alex in the Seaside of Bulgaria says, if you could sail on board the Queen Mary, what would you do on the ship? I would do exactly what I plan to do on the Queen Mary 2, which is I would go to the first class main lounge, if I was traveling first class, and I would have tea and, just sit there and relax. I would also walk around the ship and explore it as well. So that's what I would do. Yeah. Jay Aspinall says, hey Alex, sorry I'm late, love your channel. My sister was a tour guide on Queen Mary back in the 80s, and I would get babysat with her wandering the ship. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Alex India House says, thoughts on Avatar expansion plans? As far as I know, they haven't released any official plans on how they plan to expand, so I don't have any opinion on that. It depends on what they show. When they show it, then I'll know what to think about it. Willem says, what's your most recent video about Alex? It is about how ocean liners were designed to make you forget that you were at sea. K4RNA, thank you so much for the donation. Here is some coal for moving the train. Thanks so much. It's so nice of you. Let's see. Yeah, Transit Biker P&O ships definitely would have had to be designed for very long voyages, because the North Atlantic crossing is a long crossing, but not nearly as long as the crossings that the P&O ships would have to do, because the Pacific is a lot larger than the Atlantic. So yeah, I can't even imagine. Chris says he got a free 3-day and 3-night pass. Nice. Dangerous Mind says, P&O stands for Peninsular and Oriental Steam Navigation Company. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Jay Aspen says, I love your Queen Mary updates about the current state of the ship and reopening. Thanks. Yeah, there will be another one soon. I'm waiting till my friend can go to the ship and film more footage for me. Then I'll review the footage to see if there's been any changes to the various interiors, exteriors, and then I can take that information and put that into a news reel for you guys, or I can give you guys an update. And then I'm also, that footage that he's taking, I'll be using it for future Queen Mary videos, like about the history of the ship, the design of the ship, the technology, all that stuff. So I'm waiting for him to be able to go there and then film that for me. Because I know I haven't made very many Queen Mary videos lately. That's literally because with the footage I have now, or that I could find online, I can't go any further into detail on the ship about the history, the design, because there just isn't enough. I need something more specific than just a general view of a hallway or a general view of a room. I need close-ups of certain things now. It's getting to that point. And then there's some rooms that are not even filmed, like people don't usually have it on their channel. If they do, it's not very, very well filmed. So I told my friend, I'm like, okay, when you go there, I'm going to need this, and that. So that way I have something more specific, and I can give you guys more videos about the Queen Mary. Oh, Carl says, if you were commissioned to and given all the money and time needed to travel and film a documentary on the Queen Mary, her present state, history, career, her conception, where would you go? Well, I'd have to go to Clydebank. That's the first thing. I'd have to go to Southampton. I'd have to go to Sydney. I'd have to go to New York. And possibly Liverpool. Although the ship never really traveled to Liverpool generally, but I'd have to go to do they still call it Cherbourg? I don't think they call it Cherbourg anymore. They call it something else. But I have to go there. So I guess those are the filming locations that I would need. Yeah. Amelia, Alex, if you could time travel back 100 years ago, would you sail on the RMS Olympic or RMS Aquitania? Aquitania. Do I have a particular reason why? I just think Aquitania on the inside is more beautiful than Olympic, so I would rather be on Aquitania. And Aquitania was larger than Olympic, so I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to roam around the largest ship at the time. So yeah, I would say Aquitania. Justin says, now that the ship will be reopened, I look forward to seeing the Queen Mary sometime soon. She is a legend and a World Heritage Site. I agree. I really wanted to stay aboard the Queen Mary this year. I was saving up money for it to go visit in May. I was hoping to visit in May when the ship fully reopened. But I only just barely had the money, and I thought it would not be a good risk to spend a certain amount of money to go down there, and what if something happened and I needed to spend money on something else, then I wouldn't have the money. I'd have to dig into the savings that I put towards the UK trip, and I can't do that. Because what good is savings if you're going to just spend it, you know? I really, really want to take the Queen Mary 2 voyage. I really, really want to go to the UK, film all that stuff that will be for the channel, explore Paris, you know, explore Belfast, all that stuff. So I'm like, I can't, in all good consciousness, dig into that savings because I really want to go. So I probably want to do the UK trip just a little bit more than I want to see the Queen Mary again. Just a little bit more. So I ultimately decided, I'm like, I'm not going to go to visit the Queen Mary. So Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, which ship would you prefer to sail on, RMS Queen Elizabeth or RMS Queen Elizabeth II? The original RMS Queen Elizabeth. I am a big fan of Art Deco style. The QE2 I like because of its history. but I am not a big fan of the space age look of the inside of the ship. So I would actually prefer the original Queen Elizabeth because of the Art Deco style. Mike says, Alex, I just watched your latest video. Forgetting you were at sea. Great video. Thank you so much. Mike says, Olympic was still bigger than Aquitania. I have to look at that again. I don't recall that. Amelia asks a good question. Did Cunard take Aquitania's design and enlarge it, removing the fourth funnel, and name that design the Queen Mary? Originally, yes. Originally. I have only one image showing concept art of the Queen Mary. The concept art dates back to 1929, okay? And it shows what looks like Aquitania. And essentially, it's got Queen Mary's funnels on it. So yes, they originally wanted to enlarge Aquitania's design to make Queen Mary, but when Cunard and John Brown really thought about it, they realized that what they need is an all-new ship. They could not do that. They needed an all-new ship. So Queen Mary's current design is not based off of Aquitania's hull. I'll tell everyone that right now, because I know some people will say, oh, but it is. No, they originally did, and there is evidence that they originally wanted to do that, but they did design an all-new hull from scratch, just for Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. And there are some people who say Queen Elizabeth's hull is not the same as Queen Mary. It is. It is the same as Queen Mary's. The only difference with Queen Elizabeth's hull is that, she has a sharper rake at the front of the bow that it makes the ship longer by 10 feet, but that's about it. And I guess you could say that Queen Mary has a well deck on the forward bow area, but Queen Elizabeth does not have a well deck. So those are the only two differences between the two hulls of the ships. But other than that, yeah, Queen Mary's hull is 100% brand new, completely redone, just for the Queen Mary. Yeah. Let's see, hold on. So Quiz Chris says, you should explore Disneyland Paris. I will, actually, because when I go to my UK trip, I'm going to be with my friend Chris. And his channel, he films, like, Disney parks and other theme parks and puts them on his channel. And he needs to film Disneyland Paris when we go. So I will be going to Disneyland Paris with him and exploring it. Justin says, have you ever met or got a message from any former passengers or crew that once served on the Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth? Yes, I have gotten all kinds of messages from people that say that. So I have gotten messages from passengers who've been on the Queen Mary as far back as the 1950s. I've got messages from former crew that were on the Queen Mary from the late 50s, early 60s, late 60s. 1960s, not 60 years of age. I have got messages from people whose either parents or grandparents sailed to war aboard the Queen Mary, and they have told me about their war experiences. Yeah, I've gotten all kinds of messages from people that have a very direct connection to the ship, either by sailing on it or serving on it. It's been really cool to read the messages. Very few have been able to offer me information that I could use in my videos. Well, actually, there was one person, and their story did directly affect one of my videos because I was able to put it on there. But one person told me about how their father was sailing to war aboard the Queen Mary, and his father was on the promenade deck. They had kind of rough seas. It wasn't so bad, but it did make the ship roll a lot. And he was kind of out there getting air because the ship smelled like puke. And he saw a bunch of guys kind of roughhousing and rough playing. All of a sudden, the ship tilted. I think he said to port. And it just tilted like crazy. And at the same time, when the guys were roughhousing, one of them tripped over another guy's foot. And he took a tumble over the railing of the Queen Mary and fell into the ocean. And I believe this was the Indian Ocean. I believe they were traveling from Sydney to, at the time it was called Bombay, and which is today Mumbai, India. And the poor young man took a tumble over the railing and into the water. And everybody went silent because they knew they could not call man overboard. No one would save him. The ship was filled with 15,000. No. It was filled. I'm sorry. That Americans filled it with 15,000. For Australians, it was 5,000 to 6,000. The ship was filled with 5,000 to 6,000 people at the time, and they were under strict orders to not stop for anything or anyone, or else that put them at risk of being targeted by a Axis submarine, German or whatever. So they could not stop. They did report that the poor man went overboard, but they couldn't save him. There was no way. And the ship was speeding, at almost 32 knots across the ocean. So he was gone. And he was in the middle of the Indian Ocean. There was just no one had any hope for him. So yeah, that was a pretty sad story, and I did include that in my videos about Queen Mary's World War II service, which I'm planning to combine those 3 videos into one video, the same way I did with my Disneyland Railroad video, how I combined 4 into 1. Well, I'll be combining the Queen Mary World War II videos into one video to make it more clear, more concise. People don't have to search for different links to find the other videos. So, but that story is included in my videos. So pretty sad. Let's see. Daniel says, Alex, ever thought about doing a video on the Transcontinental Railroad? It has crossed my mind, yes, but I've never felt a pull or a tugging to want to do it, so I just haven't done it yet. Nelia says, Alex, what is the deck that is between 2 well decks behind the forecastle, and superstructure of an ocean liner? Well, if a ship has 2 well decks, that means there is usually a forward well deck and an aft well deck. So what is between the 2 well decks, behind the forecastle, and the superstructure? If it's behind the forecastle and it's behind the superstructure, that puts it towards the aft well deck. I don't know. You'd have to be more clear or more specific, because that sounds like it could be anything in between the entire length of the ship. So I don't know. Carter says you have to cross the wreck of the Titanic. If you're on the Queen Mary 2, the Queen Mary 2 always sails about 100 miles south of where Titanic sank. So while you do cross the longitudinal line of where Titanic sank, you're still 100 miles south of it. Because ever since Titanic sank, they moved the shipping lines 100 miles south to avoid the the icebergs entirely. So Queen Mary 2 now sails 100 miles further south. But every April 15th or around that time, if they're crossing the ocean, they will lay a wreath of roses in the water as they pass the longitudinal line where Titanic sank. Behind the forecastle and ahead of the superstructure. So as far as I know, the only deck on a ship that is directly behind the forecastle deck, but ahead of the superstructure, is the well deck. So, but you already mentioned that it's not the well deck, so I don't know. I've only heard that between that could be a well deck, so I don't know. Yeah. Sorry. It kind of sounds like a trick question, to be honest. It sounds like you're asking me to name it. Yeah, Mike, she is Amelia, she said it wasn't a well deck. So, because her original question was, what is the deck that is between two well decks behind the forecastle and superstructure of an ocean liner? So, if she's asking what the deck is, and she's already mentioned that it's not the well decks, then I don't know what deck it is. Like, imagine Titanic with it. I mean, I have a model of Titanic right there, and the only thing between the forecastle and the superstructure is the well deck. I don't know any other deck that's there. Like, I don't know. I've never heard of that. Unless I have, and I just don't know, but I don't know any ships that have an additional deck that is between that area. Yeah, I don't know. Because most ships are built the same way. Like, you either have a forecastle that leads to the superstructure, or you have a forecastle that leads to the well deck that leads to the superstructure. So, I don't know. On Queen Mary, there is a deck that the mast is sitting on, but that deck is considered part of the superstructure, even though it juts out in front of it. So it's considered part of the superstructure. So, I can't, yeah. There are a few ships that have that same thing, but it is considered the superstructure, so I don't know. Yeah. Ooh, this is a good question. Carl asks, what do you think is the most historically significant artifact on the Queen Mary? Something that changed history or that a famous passenger touched? Something that changed history. There are a few, but I don't think it's as mind-blowing as what people might think. Like, the very first thing that comes to mind is the lifeboats. Queen Mary was the first ship in history to have a full fleet of motorized lifeboats, all lowered down with electric winches. Now, the electric lifeboat deployment system was not unique to Queen Mary, but again, it's the combination of things. First full fleet of motorized lifeboats, and they were lowered from those sliding electric winches. That made the ship very safe, very unique, and it changed the way, lifeboats were designed after that. I mean, when you look at the design of Queen Mary's lifeboats, even the lifeboats were different. They were designed to have these, they were just really safe. They had these, they called them buoyancy tanks, and they lined the sides of the lifeboat. So, and then the lifeboat was split into different watertight compartments. It had watertight bulkheads that came up about to waist high. And it was designed so, if there was a leak in the lifeboat, it wouldn't sink the lifeboat. But the other thing, too, was even if all the compartments were flooded on a lifeboat, Queen Mary's lifeboat, and she was carrying all 145 passengers per lifeboat, the lifeboat technically would still not sink. It would probably go right at water level, and your clothes would be soaked, but the lifeboat would not sink. It was designed not to sink. And it was also designed so the lifeboat could not capsize. If it did capsize or tried to, it would right itself. So that's what was so weird and so cool about Queen Mary's lifeboats, and it really changed the way lifeboats were designed after that. And now you go on a cruise ship, and those big orange lifeboats, the reason why they're so safe and stuff like that, all thanks to the Queen Mary. So that is definitely an artifact that really changed things. But if you're looking for something more human-sized on the Queen Mary, something that changed history. Whoa. I can't think of one when it comes to something more human-sized, like an actual artifact that you can pick up or something like that. I can't think of one that would have changed history or was, particularly touched by a famous person. No, I do. I know one. In Winston Churchill's suite on main deck, his suite was located midships. One of the bathrooms there's 2 bathrooms in his suite. One of the bathrooms, the bathtub was used to test models of the mulberry harbors for the beaches of Normandy during World War II. So those beaches where they offloaded equipment and machinery to help liberate, France and, parts of Europe, they used these portable harbors that were designed for ships to offload onto them. And they were brand new inventions, and they weren't sure how they were going to behave with rough water, So they brought models of them onto the ship as Winston Churchill was sailing on the Queen Mary from the UK to, I think the ship was heading for New York, but Winston was going from New York to Boston. And he brought the models of the mulberry harbors. He and his top general used the bathtub in his suite to assemble the models of the mulberry harbors. The general was making waves in the bathtub, and they were there for hours. They said that they didn't stop till 2 a.m., that Mrs. Churchill had to ask for her neighbors to use her neighbor's bath just to take her bath before bed. And so till 2 a.m, Winston Churchill and his general tested the models of the mulberry harbors in Queen Mary's bathtub in his suite. And if it wasn't for those mulberry harbors and their invention and their use, it would have been harder to offload all that equipment they needed to help liberate and take back Europe. So particularly France, the Normandy region. So that was a big contribution to history, and it all stemmed from a bathtub on Queen Mary. So that is, I will, yeah, that I will say. Pretty cool. Justin says, follow-up question. Do you record the various messages and comments from former passengers and crew? Maybe copy and paste into a Word document and print it out. That's what I do, just a thought. So I keep the ones that I think are important. So I have taken screenshots of the ones I thought were important, which probably amounts to maybe 2 or 3. Because I've gotten a lot. But it's usually people that say, oh, I was a crewman in 1962. And I'm like, great, do you have any stories? And then they never comment back. Unfortunately, a lot of them are elderly people, and elderly people do not know when they receive notifications that they got a reply. So they don't often understand, and they don't realize that I've asked them a question. They don't know. So that's usually what happens is people are like, oh, I sailed on the Queen Mary in 1955. And I'm like, oh, awesome, do you have any stories of that? And then they don't respond. So I can't save those things, but when I've gotten stories that people just post the story first, I will save those. And I think I've got maybe 3 of those. Yeah. And they're pretty cool. Yeah, they're pretty cool. So I wish I had more, full stories. But if only the people who commented that they sailed the ship had just responded with a story or something, I could save those stories for future use. That's what I want to do. There was one man who commented, and he told me that he had sailed the ship twice, once to war, once back. No, and then he sailed as a passenger later on. And I said, can I interview you? Please. I said, I would love to get your stories on video, or at least in audio, or even just, by text so I could write them down. He didn't respond. So I was like, darn it. But, yeah. And yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of what it's like. Amelia says, I was on older ships like RMS Oceanic. Oh, I think I know what you're asking about. The bridge and the officers' quarters were often separate. Like on Oceanic, the bridge and the officers' quarters were separated from the main superstructure where the first class promenade was. So they called those islands, believe it or not. So you had the Officers' Island. There might be a different name for it, but as far as I know, that's the name. The Officers' Island, which had officers' quarters and the bridge above it. And then there was a separation. It wasn't a well deck, but it was a separation. And then you had the first class passenger island, which included a promenade deck and all that stuff. And then there would be like another separation sometimes, and you would have the second class island, where you had their little second class promenade and stuff like that. So I think I know what you mean now, yeah. But yeah, as far as I've been told, they were called islands. Kind of like how an aircraft carrier, its bridge and all of its navigation and stuff like that is located on a part that juts out from the top of the flight deck, and they call that an island. So that's as far as I know. Carter says, "Can you drive Queen Mary 2 with her captain?" No, I don't think they even let you onto the bridge. They have an observation area on the Queen Mary 2 where you can be behind glass and observe the people on the bridge operating the ship, but you can't drive the ship. Like, yeah. Carter Asher asked an iceberg question. Is there a real iceberg that she sank? I don't understand your question either. Ken says, "Are you still doing tea times on Wednesdays? I haven't seen any for the last three. I have not officially stopped doing them. It's just that for the last 3 weeks, I've had very busy Wednesdays, like really, really busy Wednesdays, and I just couldn't do it. Like 3 weeks ago, I had 2 whole weeks where I was waiting for my apartment to be inspected, and they couldn't tell me when they were coming. And it turned out they didn't come until the Friday of the second week. So because I didn't know when they were coming, I could not do a tea time, because any moment they could have popped in and wanted to get, inspect the apartment, because they do it for safety inspections and stuff like that. So they didn't come till Friday of the second week. So that was the reason why for 2 weeks I didn't have that. And then I think last week I didn't do one on Wednesday because I was really busy working on videos. And by the time I remembered that it was Wednesday, it was too late for me to set up a tea time. It would have taken me an hour, and I was just like, I don't have the time to do this. I have to finish a video. So, but I have not officially like stopped doing them. It's just that I've just been really, really busy. I almost didn't even do one today because I was talking to Steve, and he goes, "Oh, are you doing tea time today? You haven't posted." And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot today was Sunday." Like, I was just so busy. And so I almost didn't do one today, but I knew I had to because I skipped Wednesday. So, but yeah, so I'm going to try not to skip Wednesday of this week. I'm going to try. Yeah. Carl says, you say they changed the sailing route to be south of the Titanic wreck, but when I was on the Queen Mary 2 last year, we sailed about 80 meters north of Titanic. And I have photographic evidence corroborate this. Well, then I could very much be very wrong. I mean, if you have photographic evidence, then that kind of speaks for itself then. I could be very wrong. I was told that they changed the route 100 miles south. But, I mean, it could be that the person that told me that was probably confused. Because here's another fun fact that I know. Have you guys seen the painting of the North Atlantic done by, what was it? Oh God, I forget the artist's name. It's in the first class restaurant on Queen Mary on Art Deco, and it's a huge painting, and it has 2 tracks that allow crystal models of the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth to cross each other. Well, originally in 1936, before they even had a Queen Elizabeth model, those 2 tracks were designed to show the northerly and southerly routes that the Queen Mary would take. They took the northerly route during spring and summer, and then they took the southerly route during fall and winter, if I have that correctly. And the difference between the routes was 100 miles. So it could be that the person that told me that they moved those routes 100 miles south was probably confusing the north route with the south route. And so that could be an explanation for why that is. But yeah, I had assumed he was correct because he said, oh, it happened after Titanic because they didn't want him to sail anywhere near the area anymore. But yeah, then again, I'd never fully corroborated it with anyone, so I could very well be wrong. Amelia says it had additional lifeboats, 8. Yeah, Years of Seas. I already was mentioning to Amelia, because I also said it that I was thinking she might have meant that it was the deck that the mast sat on, the Queen Mary, but I told her that that deck is still considered part of the superstructure. It's not a separate deck. But it ended up being that what it sounded like was the because she mentioned the RMS Oceanic, and Oceanic does have a separation between the bridge deck and the rest of the ship, like and so yeah, I think that's what she meant, and yeah, we'll see. Maybe she'll respond and kind of say yay or nay on that, but Let's see. Justin says, good to know, Alex, on the stories. Thank you. I hope you can encourage more stories to be posted here. Absolutely. I mean, if anybody knows anybody who sailed on the Queen Mary, either as a passenger or during war, and you have stories to share, please do. I mean, you can comment in my videos, or you can send me an email. My email is posted in the description of every single one of my videos. I would love those stories. You know, I collect them, and they could be used to teach people about things, particularly because, you know, now that the ship is reopening and I'm going to be getting more footage of the interiors of the ship, I want to discuss the way people lived aboard the Queen Mary. I want to discuss, like, the crew, the passengers, more nuanced things, and having people's experiences will help me to provide more insight into that. Alex in Seaside, Bulgaria. Yes, I am going to be 31 soon. Justin. Yeah, I could do that. I mean, there's no problem with doing, like, a video that says, please give me your stories. But then what happens is, because it's not a real video, nobody clicks on it. So what it would need to be is, like, I do an actual video, and at the very end, I ask people to send me their stories. So that's something I could do. Yeah, I'll see about it. Carl says, does this channel have a Discord? If not, why not? Before I ever did ocean liners, I did have a Discord server. It was open to the public at the time. But I used to manage Discord servers for friends, and things happen on Discord servers that are sometimes not legal. And it's a lot of responsibility. If you have someone who decides to private message somebody they met on your server, and one person's an adult and the other person is not an adult, that can be a huge problem, and that becomes your obligation. So I have dealt with enough issues that I'm kind of like, I do not want an open Discord server where people, you know, where everything becomes my responsibility. It's a lot, especially in this day and age. So I don't do that. I did eventually open a new server that was for channel members and Patreon members when I had a Patreon. And it was, you know, it was for anybody to talk about stuff. You know, I had people, some people that are here right now were in my Discord server but it was only for members. That way I could keep more control on it. But then what I discovered was that I just couldn't dedicate enough time to it. I couldn't do enough for the server to make it worthwhile. And people weren't really talking to each other on the server. You know, like, I would come in and I would say hi and stuff, and then they would say hi and they might ask me a few things, but then the conversation would fizzle out and nobody would talk to each other, you know? So they were there for me, not for each other. So I just realized, I'm like, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. So I just shut down the server altogether. I no longer do a Discord server, and I no longer do Patreon either, because Patreon, it's just a more complicated and worse version of the YouTube membership. So I could not keep up with Patreon either. So Chris says, hey Alex, I'm 36 years of age. Pretty cool. We're almost close in age. Yeah, Mike, it is a long stream. I didn't realize it'd be a long stream, but what it was like the first half hour of the stream, I was still preparing for the stream. And then by the time I sat down and relaxed, conversation just, you know, it's been officially 3 hours, so I'm going to have to end the stream soon. Alex in Seaside of Bulgaria says, which video is your greatest success in your opinion? Based on comments, views, and your own opinion, it would be my video called The Rolling Mary, all about how Queen Mary had all these stories of her famous rolling that she did while out at sea, and particularly her most horrific event where she was struck by a 92-foot rogue wave, possibly the largest rogue wave ever documented. I'm not going to say necessarily proven. It did happen. Everybody on the ship saw it, but it was never officially recorded in science, so they don't consider it like, you know. But yeah, it was. So yeah, that is a great video. Worked really hard on it. I think it's entertaining, it's fun, and it's got the most views than any other video on my channel. So there's a few close runner-ups, but that one has the most views, and it's a good video. So let's see. Dino says, "Hey Alex, all from Nashville, Tennessee." Nice. Hello, Dino. Justin says, "I believe they shifted the sea routes south during the winter and early spring and months, and that's yeah. They did." Irving Johnson says, "My neighbor was on the Queen Mary at wartime. This couple stories are things you already know about, such as how many sailed at a time." Oh, okay. Chris says, "How does Discord work?" I can't teach you. I can't teach you on a live stream how to work Discord. You'll have to just research it or something. Thank you, Brian. You have a great Easter too. Wait, my gran, who grew up quite impoverished, had some wealthy relatives who offered her to sail on the Queen Mary on a world tour, but she turned the offer down, jokingly condemn her for this regularly. I would love to go on the Queen Mary 2 on a world tour. That would be so fun. It'd be so expensive, but it'd be so fun. Tristan says, "Any updates on the Queen Mary?" As of right now, no. There's no updates. I'm waiting till my friend can go on the ship and see it and film it and document it, and then from there I will look at his footage and see what updates I can give people. Chris, I'm not very good with computers at all. I am the wrong person to ask about technology and how to work things. Quite often, most of the time, all the technology I have my friends telling me how to work it. I mean, literally. One time, I was on the phone with my friend for 45 minutes because I couldn't get my my headphones. I couldn't get my headphones to work. I'm so embarrassed telling this story. I'm so embarrassed telling this story. I couldn't get my headphones to work. I was on the phone with him for 45 minutes. We're going through the computer, trying to change the softwares, do all these things. And after 45 minutes, like, he's like, "Is it plugged in?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's plugged in." He goes, "Just double check." So I check. I'm like, "It's plugged in." And I look and I'm like, "Wait a minute, it's plugged into the wrong port. The headphones are plugged into the microphone jack, not the headphone jack." So I'm not good at technology at all. All my friends help me with technology. I am so comfortable around books. If you need help learning how to use a book, I can tell you. but computers and software, not my thing at all. So, let's see. Years of Sea says, "Did the Queen Mary carry any cars?" Did the Queen Mary carry any cars besides the 2 buses on her final voyage? Yes! The Queen Mary carried a... Oh, this is so cool. It's awesome. There was another vehicle the Queen Mary carried on her final voyage, and it was Her Majesty Queen Mary's personal limousine. The brand, the car brand escapes me right now. It might have been a Rolls Royce, but it escapes me right now. But it was Her Majesty Queen Mary's personal limousine. I believe the limousine dated back to the 1930s. which is why it was so significant. And it was being carried aboard the Queen Mary to Los Angeles to be put on display around the ship, and then later to a car museum, which had it for a while. I believe the car was eventually returned back to the UK. It might still be in the United States somewhere. Don't quote me on that. But yes, the Queen Mary carried Her Majesty Queen Mary's personal limousine. So, pretty cool. Yeah. Alex on the Seaside of Bulgaria says, yes, I've watched your video about the Rolling Mary. It's nice. I just looked. You have 2 videos with more views. They are about Disneyland and cabooses, and also other videos are growing quickly. I didn't like my caboose video because after I did the video, I learned that pretty much everything I said was incorrect. Like, I thought I knew, but I didn't know, apparently. So I don't like that video because it's not very correct at all. I have to redo it. And then, let's see. A video about Disneyland. I don't know which video that would be. A Disneyland video that had more views than Queen Mary's Rolling Mary. I don't know what video that would be. Oh, your most recent major success was Disneyland Railway. Yeah, that one was a major success. I got a lot of rail fans, thankfully. Like, you know, there were a lot of Disney fans that watched, but a majority of the viewers were fans of steam railroads, and that is exactly what I was aiming for, because I want to grow my railroad enthusiast group on my channel. I have to post more railroad themed videos, but yeah, so because I love trains, so but yeah, that was a very good. I'm proud of that video too, the Disneyland Railroad video. It is as accurate as you could possibly get, down to the tiniest detail. Chris, I know what that's like. Yeah, I know how to drive a car. I could recite to you laws forward and backwards because I studied studied very carefully to get my driver's license when I was a teenager. But my anxiety made it so bad that I could not safely drive. I would almost get in car wrecks because of how anxious I was behind the wheel. And after that, I realized I couldn't drive because of it. It was just so bad. It was so bad. I would have to pull over often, and I'd just be in tears because my anxiety was so, like, out of control when I was behind the wheel of a vehicle. It didn't help, too, that my first car was a really old, beat-up Ford van. And while I was coming to a stop at a street intersection, the brakes were not working at all. There's just complete emptiness when I hit the brake pedal. And I ended up coasting right through the intersection as cars were passing through. I had never been so scared in my whole life when that happened. And yeah, that wasn't my fault. The brake lines on that old Ford just, you know, it was old car. But nevertheless, even though that wasn't my fault, it frightened me like no end. See you later, K4RNA. Let's see. Years of Sea says, that's awesome. Where did they keep the limousine? The limousine was kept in... So the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, they both had what are called motor car cargo rooms. So they had special sections for motorized cars because, believe it or not, people did travel with cars quite often. So so the Queen Mary had a special cargo area for motor cars. And so Her Majesty Queen Mary's limo was put in that cargo hold during that final voyage. Justin says, celebrating holidays and advertising those on the Queen Mary and for broadcasting live would be a nice way to bring people in. I would like to do that. I really would. I was hoping that if I did visit the Queen Mary this year, I would live stream from there or something like that. But it just turned out that I needed to save that money for my UK trip because, people have been waiting a long time. People are really excited for me to do that trip and come back with footage and vlogs and all kinds of stuff and make videos about it. So I was like, I can't put off that trip any longer than I need to, because then people are going to be like, when are you going to do it? So yeah, I have to save that money for that. I'm almost there. I should have enough money by June to start serious planning, actually booking stuff, booking my hotels, booking the voyage, booking the places we're going to visit and stuff like that. So I think by June I should have the money to do that. And then by the end of September, I'll have all the money I need saved up from my own pocket, by the way. I know people did donate $1,000 towards it, but the rest of the money is from my pocket. The original goal on GoFundMe, which, by the way, if you want to donate towards that, I have a link for GoFundMe in the description below. But the original goal on that GoFundMe is $8,000. And I've got about a little over 1,000 from various people. And I've also donated to that myself. I think about $100 is donated by me. But then, let's see. For just extra insurance purposes, I decided that my total for myself will be $9,000 to save up, just in case things end up being more expensive than I planned. So, yeah. So while people did donate about $1,000, I will be donating the rest of the majority. Well, not donating. I will be saving up the rest of the majority for that. I already have a couple thousand already saved up towards it. And I think by June, I should have enough money to start booking everything. And only in June, I think, will I be able to officially say when I'm going. Because only then will I know what I've booked. So I'm hoping to go as soon as possible. But we'll see, because the ship does book up a whole year in advance. So it might be difficult to get a cheap room within a year's time. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Pelly says, what other historical topics are you interested in? War, politics, government, geopolitics, architecture. Architecture. I definitely am interested in learning about architecture. I'm not knowledgeable enough to officially speak about architecture, but I love learning about architecture. I don't have an interest in war. I have an interest in a slight interest in politics. I do like discussing philosophies, ethics, and stuff like that, all related to politics. But I do not have an interest in the history of politics, nor the history of government, or geopolitics. Mainly, I like stuff that not very many people talk about. I like little things, If I go to the UK and I see a pub that says established 16, I'm going to go, I want to go in there, and I'm going to find the manager like a Karen. I'm going to find the manager, and I'm going to ask them, can I interview you and learn more about this pub? Could you tell me some history? I would love to make a video about it. It's the pub that I'm interested in. It's not necessarily the government or the history of the government or the politics. So that's the kind of stuff I like. And of course, Steam. I love almost anything that runs on Steam. I say almost because there are some, cars that were operated by Steam. I'm not really interested in cars. But yeah, so trains, ocean liners, that kind of thing. Steam tractors. I like steam tractors. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in. I'm interested in stuff that not many people go to school for. You know what I mean? They go to school to learn, world history and stuff, and I don't. I'm not interested in revolutionary wars of different countries, and I'm just not, you know. I wish I was, but I'm not. Aha! Brian says her limousine is in the Coventry Museum. That's right, yes. I had forgotten the name, but yeah. Is the Coventry Museum in the U.S.? Because I feel like when I read about it, it sounded like it's still in the U.S., but I don't know for certain. It could still... That Coventry Museum could be in the U.K. But yeah, that is correct. That's where the limo is today. My Walt's Impossible Dream video has 335,000 views. I didn't know that. I thought it had 235,000. Well, that's crazy. This video has 330. Rolling Mary has 323. Wow. Fire Alarm Boy says, "Oh, oh God, that is scary." What is scary? James Dean says, "How did you stop?" How did I stop what? Dino says, "Do the cargo areas still exist on Queen Mary?" Yes, a lot of them do. There's been maybe one or two that have been converted. But yeah, the cargo areas still exist on Queen Mary. They are still empty. Some of them have storage, stuff being stored in them, I mean. But they are still there. They are still there. Tyler says, "You hit 3 hours." Oh, I hit 3 hours a long time ago. Carl says, "Does anyone know if you can actually use the drawing rooms on the Queen Mary to lounge in if you book in at the hotel?" No, you can't. So the drawing room, like the first class drawing room, is a gift shop. So they're not going to clear out the gift shop, you know, for you to use it. But there are certain rooms aboard the ship that they use as meeting rooms. So part of the long gallery is currently a meeting room that you can book. They also have turned part of the starboard promenade into a few meeting rooms, like the Victoria room and the King George the Sixth room. Things like that. And then there's the Capstan Lounge, which used to be several things on the Queen Mary. Now today it's just a big empty place that you can book. So they've got things like that, but the original drawing rooms that were specifically drawing rooms in their day are no longer in existence, or the last one, being the first class one, is used as a gift shop. Quiz Chris says, "Are you flying or traveling by sea to Europe?" Queen Mary 2 voyage, both ways. From New York to Southampton, then Southampton back to New York. Me and my friend will be spending 2 weeks in the UK and Paris. And then we'll wait for the ship to come back to pick us up, and then we'll go back home to New York. So, yeah. I'm thinking that what I'll do is... You see, my friend lives in the LA area, and I live in northern Oregon, which is... 1,200 miles apart. But I'm thinking what I'll do is, because I don't want to travel to New York by myself. I just don't. So what I'm thinking of doing is I will fly from Portland to Long Beach, stay on the Queen Mary a night or two. Then my friend and I will go from LAX, the airport, to New York together. And then we will get on the ship together and then sail, do our whole trip, come back, and then I will do everything in reverse order. So I'll fly down with him back to LAX, stay on the Queen Mary a night or two, and then get my plane up to Portland. I know that's more expensive, I know, but I hate being on planes. I really hate it. It would be nice if I was stuck on that plane for 5 hours, that'd be with someone I enjoy talking to, so... Instead of a stranger being next to me going, "Excuse me, sir, your elbow is in my rib cage." So I would rather do that, Yeah. John C. says, I think you may be interested in the events in Brooks, Oregon called the Great Oregon Steam Up. I've heard of that. I might attend it sometime. I did not know, Alex, that the RMS Baltic was one of the first ships to carry cars. I didn't know. That's pretty cool. James Dean says, you're getting to the comments late. I know, it's trying to read all of them. It gets really difficult. With no context, so I'll contextualize it for you. When you were explaining your story about driving that old car and the brakes were shot, how did you eventually stop? Oh, I eventually stopped by the time I got across the intersection. I was, obviously, my foot was not on the gas anymore, so I was actually coasting to a stop, and what I did was I went over to the far right lane, and I started rubbing the wheels against the concrete, what do you call it, the curb, against the curb, and I rubbed the wheels against the curb till the car came to a stop, and so I was living with a friend's uncle at the time. I called up the uncle. I told him, like, hey, I need you to help me, because he's a car guy, like, he's a major car guy, and so he helped me refurbish the van in the first place, because it wasn't running when I bought it. And so he came over, and he parked at a sandwich shop, and then he got in the car, and we drove the car all the way back to his neighborhood. Now, I was worried because I told him, like, what are we going to do to stop? He used the emergency brake. I should have used the emergency brake. But in my defense, the emergency brake in that van was a little knob with a little tiny knob you get between your fingers, and you pull it physically, and you have to use your physical strength to do it. So I knew if I tried to use the emergency brake in the van, I would have, like, broken my fingers off. So in my defense, that's why I didn't use the emergency brake. But he used the emergency brake to get us through the streets to his neighborhood. And then you won't believe what he did. He says, this actually has an easy fix. I said, how does a drained brake line have an easy fix? He goes, it's not a drained brake line. He says, you have air in your brake line. And he says, but fortunately, these Ford cars have a way to get around that, to fix it. And I said, what? Next thing you know, we're on this empty street. He hits it in full reverse. We are reversing at like 45 or 50 miles an hour down the street, right? And then all of a sudden he starts pumping the brakes in reverse, right? And what that did was, I guess there's a mechanism in the van that's designed so when you pump the brakes in reverse, the air drains out of the brake line. And then next thing you know, we came to a stop. The brakes were fine. I don't know how, I'm not a car guy, but he knew to do that. And they worked after that. So that was how we fixed that problem. Pretty crazy, huh? Alex, Seaside of Bulgaria, says, what is your favorite drink and dish? My favorite dish is jambalaya, so it's my favorite. My favorite drink is, for talking non-alcoholic, I really like orange juice. I really do. I love orange juice. I don't drink it very often. Believe it or not, I know some people will be like, Alex, it's full of sugar. I actually don't drink it very often. I never keep orange juice in my apartment. But when I have the option on a special occasion to order a glass of orange juice, I do. Alcoholic beverages, I really like Hurricanes. Especially if they're done right. I like Hurricanes. But I haven't had a Hurricane in 5 years. 5 years. It's been a long time. So, yeah. Brian says her limo, Her Majesty Queen Mary's limo, was a Daimler 66 and is in Coventry, England. Nice. Thank you so much, Brian, for that, because I wouldn't have remembered that off the top of my head. Chris says, I hate the idea of flying anywhere. I would rather take a train and or by ship. Same here. I mean, I myself don't even want to take a plane from the west coast to New York. I don't want to do that, but I have to, because there's no way I'm going to spend a week on a train. Like, it literally will take a week to go from Portland to New York by train, and I don't have the money or the time to do that. So, unfortunately, I have to take a plane, but I hate taking planes. So, Metal Raider says, "Hi, Alex. Was charging my phone. Glad I was able to catch you. Good to see you. I've been trying to end this live stream for the past hour, but I get so caught up with the questions. I like answering. You guys are asking good questions today. This is one of those days where, like, there's a lot of good questions." James Dean says, "Thank you for answering my question. Do you plan to spend the night in New York City?" I think I should, yeah, because you never know. Like, if your flight is delayed or something, like, you have to be on the Queen Mary 2 at a certain time. Cunard is not very accommodating. Like, you have to be there on time. So, which actually is kind of cool, because traditionally they are very, like, you know, like be here or don't be here. So I'm thinking what my friend and I will do is we will get to New York the day before. He and I really want to see the World Trade Center Memorial. We both have a deep connection, emotional connection to that. Not an actual connection, but an emotional connection to that. We want to see it. So we're going to go see that, and then go to a motel or something, hotel, motel, stay there overnight, and then the next day we will go catch the Queen Mary 2 to Southampton. And so, yeah, I do think we'll be staying a night there. And we might have to stay a night on the way back, because the ship will arrive. Well, the ship arrives early in the morning, but they don't let you off till like 3 p.m. So, you know, if something happens and we can't make our plane flight the same day, it might be wise to stay a night in New York and then take the plane the next day. I'll have to talk with him about it, because we'll, you know, by June we'll have to have serious plans in the works and really hash every detail out to the tiniest degree, even like where we plan to eat when we get to the UK, because we don't want to have any unexpected expenses that might ruin everything. You know, I don't earn very much money. I mean, I've been saving up for this trip for the last year. And so I don't want to go there and be surprised by, like, going to a fancy restaurant and spending a lot of money. So, yeah, so let's see. Years of Sea says, "Have you been in New York before?" No. A lot of my fans from other parts of the world might be like, "Really? But you're in the U.S." But the U.S. is huge, and it costs a lot of money to get from one side to the other. So I've never been to New York. My dad has been to New York, and he loved it. So I'm kind of secretly hoping, you guys, that my dad will come with me on the trip to the UK. But if he can't do it on this trip, then maybe next time, because I do want to go to the UK again in the future aboard the Queen Mary 2, because on this trip, this first trip, I will not be able to see everything I want to see. There's a lot of cities I want to go to that I will not be able to go to on this trip, like Edinburgh, like Glasgow, or Clydebank more specifically, or you know, there's the White Swan Hotel in Alnwick that I really want to see. Can't go there. There's a lot of places I can't go. Liverpool, can't go. There's just not enough time. So I would like to go back again in the coming years to see all the stuff I couldn't see, and I think then my dad will be able to come with me, because that'll take a lot of saving. So we'll see. Dina says, "If you do a stopover on Queen Mary, you should do a meet and greet at the bar on Queen Mary." Unfortunately, I don't do meet and greets, you guys. I used to in the early days of my channel, but in the recent years, I have been getting a lot of threats of violence and a few death threats. I no longer meet people in public. I don't tell people where I'm going ahead of time. If I do, I don't tell them when I'll be there. So you guys probably won't even know I've been on my UK trip until after I've come back from it. So, only just for my safety and the safety of my friend. You know, my friend Chris, he's very like, "Oh, I don't care," but I care. I don't want him to get hurt if somebody wants to come and hurt me. So I'm not going to tell anybody when I leave or until after I get back, you know. So That's unfortunately how I would love to do meet and greets with people. I love meeting the people who watch my shows. Like, you can ask people who've been subscribers since the earliest years. When I used to go to Disneyland every week, I would meet them all at the park. They would be there. I'd say hi. But that being said, folks, if I am in your area and you see me, feel free to say hi. Feel free to say, I trust you because you didn't know I was there. So I trust you because you didn't know. But yeah, if you see me walking around on the street or something and you know it's me, feel free to say hello. I always love talking to people, and especially like if I'm in the UK or Paris or something like that and you're there too, feel free to say hi. I'm the nicest person, honestly. Ask people who have met me on my channel in person. They will tell you I'm a really nice guy, and I always give people the time. I always stand there and I will have a conversation with you because I like meeting people. So, yeah. Let's see. Training Elizabeth take a month. That's crazy. Alex, if there's a prize for me taking a train all the way across the country, then I'll do it. But there's no prize. Michael says that Queen Mary looks like it has a lot of wear and tear. Yes, there's a good reason for that, you guys. I know you guys will probably see the Queen Mary 2, and you look at it and you go, wow, the Cunard's not taking good care of it. Keep in mind, the Queen Mary 2 is an ocean liner, and it will spend 7 to 8 solid days at sea, come rain or sunshine. Most cruise ships, they come into ports every 2 or 3 or 4 days. And when that happens, they get paint touch-ups. But the Queen Mary 2 will be out at sea for a full week and doesn't get paint touch-ups till it gets to New York or Southampton. So because of that, it will develop rust. Rust just happens on ships. It looks old. It looks, the paint looks like it might be faded, that kind of thing, just from the wear and tear of being on the ocean. But it is not because Cunard doesn't take good care of it. You can bet before the ship sails out, it will have its paint touch-ups before it sails out. So, yeah. And there was worries during the pandemic that, like there was images of like the theater seats being broken. From my knowledge, currently, all that stuff has been fixed. So they're keeping up with it. It's just that because of the pandemic, they were really low on, on staff and stuff like that. So it kind of had an effect on the ship. But everything is returning back to normal with the Queen Mary 2. And keep in mind, you will see more rust on the Queen Mary 2 than on a cruise ship because it spends 8 solid days on the ocean with no way to, to touch up the hull until it gets to port. So that is why. Ryan says, hey, Alex, if you didn't sit next to anyone on an airplane, would you still like flying on a plane or no? I could, if I didn't have anyone sitting next to me, that would be better, but I still don't like it. I don't know. It's not comfortable. Even if there was no one next to me, the seats are small. You got people coughing and sneezing all around you, and and the food and the drinks are tiny, and then I have something else. I have another problem. My ears don't pop when I'm in a plane. They just don't. And I will sit there for hours in agony, complete agony, because my ears don't pop. I've tried chewing gum, I've tried yawning, I've tried, all kinds of, people suggest it to me, I try it. But it doesn't help. My ears don't pop when I'm on a plane. So I sit there in agony for the entire flight. And it is like a pain. Unless you've had it, you guys, it is like a pain you've never felt. It is like you feel like someone has inserted like tennis balls into your brain. It hurts so much. So that's one of the reasons why I hate flying. Dino says, New York is very expensive. Stay in Brooklyn. We probably will stay in Brooklyn, to be totally honest. I'm trying to catch up with the comments. Unlike is pronounced Anik. I didn't know that. Okay, pronounce it Anik. Tim says, wow, so very sorry about the threats. You deserve better. You seem so nice. I'm sorry you shouldn't have to deal with any of that garbage. I know, but this is the world we live in today. You know, what can you do? Would you rather live in North America or in Europe? I know it depends on the place you're at. First and foremost, let me tell everybody who's watching, I am proud to be an American. I really am. I really am. But I've always had an affinity for the UK. More and more over the years, I've wanted to live in England or Scotland. Honestly, I really, like, if someone gave me the opportunity to move there and be like, hey, here's a good reason to go. Here's how you will make a living. Here's how things will work out for you. If there was some kind of magical thing, I would take the opportunity. I would move to England or Scotland. I'm not familiar with Wales. Like, I haven't heard or learned very much about it, so I'm not against it or for it. I just don't know much about Wales. But yeah, I would like to live in England or Scotland. So, yeah, I would. But yeah, I am thinking, I'm like seriously considering it actually. Like, I'm thinking like, if in the distant future, if the opportunity comes and I have enough money and enough means to do so, I might actually do it. I might actually get rid of most everything I own, either giving it away or selling it, and then move to the UK. I would really like to, you know. I know a lot of people may not disagree or may not agree with me on this. At heart, I am a monarchist. So, you know, I that's just kind of how I view things, and you know, I've always had an affinity for the UK, and I really like the people there. I really like how things are. I mean, there will always be things you like or dislike about a country. There's always going to be stuff like that, but I don't know, there's something kind of there that I really want to see. That's why I'm so excited to go on this trip. Because who knows, maybe I get there and I might learn something more about it that I may love or not love. I might have a more broad understanding of what the UK is like when I get there. It might change how I feel. It might increase how I feel about it. So I'm actually really excited for this trip. Either way, the sights, the history, all that will be so fun. And plus, the other thing about the UK is you are surrounded by history. It would be so great, you know, for me to be like, oh, you know, like, I have some time today. Let's go walk over to, like, you know, this old place and learn about it and make a video about it. Like, I wish I could do that. Here in the US, you can't really do that. Everything that's historic is really far away from each other. Like, really far. If I wanted to go learn about something old, I'd have to go, like, 20 to 50 miles to get there. So it's not easy. But yeah, that is why. Oh, see you later, Daniel. Alex and Seaside Bulgaria says, speaking of countries, which is your favorite? By the way, the UK is my favorite the UK isn't a country. It's a group of countries. But let's see. I'm saying it because you talked about it. Just reminded me of this. Well, it's hard for me to say a favorite country because I've never left my own country. Like, a lot of Americans haven't left the United States because we often don't have the time or the money to do so. We're more likely to explore the U.S. due to how big it is, you know. But I've never left the United States. I don't even own a passport. I have to apply for one when I get to my new apartment because I'm going to wait till I have the new address. But I have to apply for a passport, and then when I go, I'll learn about England North Ireland, because these are the countries I'll be going. England, North Ireland, and France. So I hope there's time and money to go to Scotland. I really hope there is. I would love to see Edinburgh and to see the Royal Yacht Britannia. We'll see if I can do that. But yeah, so hopefully 3 or 4 countries. And then by then I'll have more knowledge to be able to say which country is so far my favorite. Because otherwise I've never left this country. Chris says, I've had a chance to become a German citizen by joining the German military during 2010. They were needed to bring up the recruiting numbers. Oh, interesting. Brian's got to go. I've got to go too. I really do have to get going. I have to figure out what I'm going to do for dinner and stuff. So anyway, folks, I'm going to end the live stream now. I've caught up to all the comments. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to try to do a tea time on Wednesday. Other than that, please watch the video I posted today at 4 p.m. It is called Forgetting You Are at Sea. So be sure to watch that and let me know how you think of it. Anyway, thanks, folks. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.